I think Ekans is the worst Pokemon. Hey guys, welcome to my tier list. Never thought I would do this. A lot of people wanted to see my tier list and my thoughts. I don't know why. I don't know why you would want to think like me, but congratulations. Step inside. Here's the door. I'll open it for you. We're gonna adventure inside the mind of David and see what I think about the Pokemans in my Gen 1 random battle tier list. So we're starting off with Ekans. I was being serious. Ekans, I do think is the worst Pokemon competitively in Generation 1 random battles. Why is this? Well, he has a pretty stinky typing. He has no stab. His stats are highly questionable. And one kind of unusually infuriating thing is that glare thing. I literally think Ekans was so bad that they buffed that move because of Ekans and Arbok, of course. It's so sleep, as you'll find, is pretty useful in this generation, and glare has the same accuracy as sleep powder, but sleep is just infinitely better than getting paralyzed. So it's like, I have to roll the dice for a move that does the same thing as Thunder Wave on a Pokemon that is like, not exactly who I would want to bring to a battle if my life depended on it. So all these things, I believe, this cumulative compounding effect is what kind of lands him at the bottom of the barrel. Basically, and this goes for the other Pokemon that I'll be placing in the bottom tier. If you get one of these Pokemon and you can successfully defeat one of your opponent's Pokemon on one-on-one, that's like huge, because these Pokemon really struggle to do that. I mean, to do that with Ekans against really most of the cast, you're going to need some luck. He has a couple of, I guess, quote-unquote good matchups, such as like the Nidorans, because they're poison types, so you can hit them with Earthquake or whatever. But those Pokemon aren't exactly super threatening to begin with. But then that's about it. That's the end of his list of accomplishments. So I hope that was clear. I don't want this video to be too insanely long, but I bet that it probably will. So get your popcorn. So my next Pokemon, which, and by the way, this tier list is going to be very, very, very roughly ordered. Very roughly. It's not really ordered, but it kind of is, but it's not. So I hope that was nice and confusing for you. I'm going to put Zubat as Ekans' compadre down here. See, what Ekans, it's my bad. What Zubat lacks in usefulness, he makes up in memorability and being a meme lord, having a good time. When you see Zubat, you already know what's about to go down. He just clicks Confuse Ray, and then it's just basically a coin flip at that point in time. And just like Ekans, bro has no stab. He has Double Edge, so if the situation wasn't already bleak as it already was, he starts taking more recoil damage. So he just slowly unalives himself, which just makes the situation worse. He has Mega Drain to kind of offset the damage. It's base 40 power and it's not even stab, and Zubat's special is god-awful. But I think if I had to pick, I would rather take Zubat than Ekans. Zubat is slightly faster, and then the Confuse Ray thing is guaranteed, unlike Glare, like I just spoke about, and it's 50-50 shot. So, maybe you can have a funny time. Maybe if you're against like a Pokemon that's 4 times weak to grass, like some of those rock types. Even some of the water types, Zubat can miraculously pull off a KO, but it's nothing that's gonna, it's nothing to write home about. So, that's that for Zubat. Now we're gonna put this happy family down here. We're just gonna put all of them here, because they're all basically functionally doing the same thing. If I had to order them, remember it's all roughly ordered, it would probably go from that, or like that, from weakest to strongest. So, in terms of their role and job, it's all the same thing. I think what they were trying to do is give these Pokemon the very coveted, as the cool kids would call it, the Bolt Beam coverage, Ice Beam, or in their case, Blizzard and Thunderbolt. Ice and Electric is fantastic coverage in Generation 1. I don't believe there's a single Pokemon that can resist both of them, just because the types are very limited at the time. You know, the only thing that resists ice is ice and water, and then, you know, electric hits that. And then half the ice types are water types anyway. So it's pretty cool, but it's just their stats just really hold them back. I think they could have been higher, but their speed is just kind of bad. The stats are bad. They're all poison types too. Actually, all 6 of these Pokemon so far have been poison types. Poison is not very good in this generation. I mean, I guess come to think about it, it just really never has been. But it's particularly not good now. If you see poison type Pokemon higher up in this list, which you'll see a couple, it's not really because they're poison type, it's because of their other attributes. Like these Pokemon down here, they're so like low. They're so like low for usefulness. I think that they should all just be level 100. But yeah. Oh, and another thing too, and this is also a determining factor of how useful a lot of these Pokemon will be, is their speed stat. Speed is extremely important. That's kind of the reason why they're ordered like this, is because Nidoran female is slightly slower than Nidoran male, and every speed point counts. Like if these two were to fight to the death a million times, Nidoran male would come out on top slightly more just because it moves first. And their special stat is actually the same if you didn't know, but Nidoran female has a higher defense and HP stat. But I would say defense, the physical defense, is probably the least useful in Gen 1. So, yeah, same thing with these two. Although Nidorina's stats is a little bit noticeably better than Nidoran male, so that's why she's ahead of him. But yeah, same thing. Slightly higher attack stat, same special. So they're outputting the same exact damage with their Blizzards and Thunderbolts, but Nidorino can move faster and, go for a Body Slam if needed, which will do more damage. And that's about that for those guys. Up next is this next Pokemon. I was debating maybe putting them in D tier, but I'm gonna make the executive decision because this is my you're walking into my mind right now, so there are no rules. Farfetch'd. I wanted to put him in D tier because somebody brought up a good point in my Discord once upon a time, and it was something, I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of like, stab, crit slashing all the time is just good no matter what. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. If I'm not mistaken, I think Farfetch'd actually may have more attack than I think Meowth and Persian, which are pretty relevant threats. And then I tried it out. Well, it wasn't really I tried it out. I just got Farfetch'd a few times, and I was remembering that statement, and I was like, no. Just no. So, Farfetch'd, the slash critting thing is awesome, but what I discovered with Farfetch'd is his speed is not high enough to guarantee the crits. So you'll sometimes just hit him basically not even with an actual real slash that would do quite a bit of damage. It actually hits quite hard from Farfetch'd. It's more like he hits you with the celery stick, which ain't really going to do much. I mean, at that point, you're better off clicking Body Slam. His moveset doesn't really work too well with his stats. He has Swords Dance and Agility, which are, cool, but with him having just Body Slam and Slash, he gets completely hard-walled by every rock type in the game. The ghost types in particular, he literally can't even touch them. And then, like, if he sets up a Swords Dance, then he forfeits the slash critting thing, you know what I'm saying? Because, in Gen 1, you ignore the stat changes when you get a crit. So if you set up a Swords Dance and you go for slashing at a crit, it made no difference at all. But it does do more with Body Slam, but it's only a little more than Slash. And then if you set up an Agility, it doesn't even change your crit rate to begin with. It just, nothing works with him, which is why I'm putting him here. He was close to D tier, though. Oh, another thing that's bad is his typing. The normal typing is good. Normal typing is actually really good in Generation 1, but it's his flying type that hurts him. He doesn't even have access to a stab flying move, so he kind of just gains all the defensive relationship weaknesses that come with being a flying type. He gets a ground immunity, but then he gains a weakness to, like I said earlier, the bolt beam thing. He gets an ice electric weakness and a rock type. Rock type's not too relevant, but those other two big problems. So if he was just simply a normal type, I might have put him in D tier. No, I would have put him in D tier. He was close. He almost made the cut. So that's Farfetch'd. Man, this video is going to be a long one, isn't it? And my final Pokemon for the bottom tier is going to be Ditto. Ditto was a very hard one for me to rank. Ditto could be anywhere on this list, I guess. You know, what does Ditto do? We all know he just transforms into the opponent. But, and let me make this very clear. All these Pokemon here are capable of doing stuff. It's just, you know, I don't really want to rely on them if I have a choice in it. And I have, in fact, been, I think, swept by an opponent's Ditto, I think twice that I can recall. One time it was like they transformed into my Arcanine the first turn and I missed Fire Blast. And then like they went first, cringed me to death with Body Slam Paras, and then Fire Blast, Hyper Beam everyone. And then I think another time a Ditto transformed into my Mewtwo, got the Amnesia boost, froze me, and then, you know, just ran away with the game. But that's the thing. In order for Ditto to do these things, to some degree, you kind of need quite a bit of luck. And it's just kind of inconsistent. And another big problem is Ditto has to burn a turn just to do something. You know, like one turn with Ditto, no matter what, will always be wasted. And another big problem is, obviously, the opponent knows that you're going to transform. So they can, you know, you are relinquishing control over the battle when you send in Ditto, because the opponent can now just send in whatever they want. Unless you're doing some next level 5D chess stuff and you're like, oh, they're going to bring in this Pokemon. I'll catch them on the Switch and bring in this. But that's not really good. I don't want to be doing stuff like that. Especially with Gen 1 as risky as it is. So it's just, not really consistent. Yes, it has its moments. Ditto is level 100, which is nice. It's just, like if I send in Ditto against literally any Pokemon in the game to simply 1v1 them, I just think in most situations, it's against you and you're probably more likely going to lose against really anything. Because, you know, you inherit their moveset and they, you know, hit you first, and because you had to burn a turn, and that's why. But I think Ditto can be useful, but not really my taste. So that's F tier. So that's all of them actually. So this could be considered low tier. They're not useless. They're just, you know, I can't harp this enough. They're just not really who I want to see on my team, especially with how scary some of these other Pokemon are going to be. D tier. These Pokemon I would consider to be like below average. They're not like god awful or nothing, but they lack like certain strengths that help you get ahead in the game, or just consistency, or just a lot of weaknesses. Something along the lines, but they have their moments. And we're going to start off with this guy. This, to me, all right, me personally, this was the most shocking thing on my whole entire tier list when I was making it. I really, really wanted it to be right here. I did. But, like I just said, these below average guys, they can have their moments. These guys, they're kind of just here. They're here to, like, click buttons. They don't really have a role. They do damage. They probably die. Onix, where, you know, he's not too far off the mark with that description. He does fulfill the role of being a ground type, and that is literally the only thing going for him. Onix has a few problems. So his moveset and his typing is actually pretty alright. I like it. It's his stats. That's where the problems come from. His speed is surprisingly good. I believe it's 191. But like everything else, it's a nightmare. His HP is terribly low. His attack is terribly low, which makes no sense. He's a giant rock snake monster. His special is terribly low. Now, and I think they tried to make it up by giving him an insanely high defense stat. I think his defense is 335. It doesn't work. If he gets hit... Okay, so you're going to see a theme. I should probably get this out of the way now, rather than later. I have come to the conclusion that there are basically 7 types of attacks in this game that are relevant, we'll say. Those attacks are normal, fire, water, electric, ice, psychic, and ground. Only 2 of those are physical, right? Which is, you know, that takes advantage of his high defense stat. One's a normal, one's a ground, dude. If you get hit with Earthquake with Onix, his HP stat is so insanely low that he can't survive them. It's so weird. Like, he gets 1v1 by Geodude despite being faster than Geodude because he can't do enough damage because his attack stat is so low. Another way to think about it, is, if you didn't know, Onyx's Earthquake, right? Coming from this monster, I didn't know this, but I actually checked like the calculator thingamabobber. His Earthquake does slightly more than Ekans. I mean, like, what the heck, man? Like, what were they thinking? But okay, so that's his weaknesses. Yeah, like those special moves I talked about, ice, water, even fire. He can't even really reliably switch into it. He can get 3 hit by a lot of fire moves. So I mean, all the opponent has to do is just switch out their fire type, and then you bring in somebody, and then you try to hold on your Onyx as a counter pick, and then he just dies later. It's sad, but the reason he's here is it's because he's a ground type. So there are some Pokemon in this game, I'm talking about the electric types, that Onyx just basically walls, with the exception of Pikachu and Raichu, because they are carrying Surf. I mean, I've even been in a situation where I was able to stop an opponent's Zapdos literally just because I had this useless Pokemon. This Zapdos was threatening most of my team, but I had him, and then I'd get a free hit on whatever he swapped in, then I had to swap out too because I had to hold on Onyx to wall it. But the fact that he's a ground type gives him a lot of points, and I can't really ignore that. He also walls certain Pokemon too, like Farfetch'd actually. He walls him too, and he's not even an electric type just because one of his resistances, one of the relevant resistances, that being normal, but not against all the normal types, because normal types such as like Tauros, he is carrying Earthquake and Blizzard, which Onyx cannot survive 2 of those. Plus he has Explosion, which is cool. It doesn't really do much. It can't really kill that many people, but if he does outspeed the opponent, you can, go boom. So he has a couple of things going for him to keep him out of this tier. Now, if this was how much I like the Pokemon, he would definitely be bottom tier. Would he be the worst? I'm not even sure myself, because now we need to talk about the next Pokemon that I absolutely despise. It's just Arbok. We all knew that. Arbok is just simply in D tier above Ekans because it is carrying Hyper Beam. That's also a trend that you'll see in this video. Most of the evolved Pokemon, I mean, this isn't really rocket science. If they're evolved, they're probably better than they're unevolved in most situations. And another big thing that gives them an advantage over some of their unevolved forms is they are carrying Hyper Beam. That is the only reason why Arbok is here. His stats are ever so slightly better than Ekans, but I would have left him in F tier if they were not carrying Hyper Beam. I mean, like I said, these guys are below average, but I have been in a situation where I got kind of cleaned up by an opponent's Arbok because they just got a million crit Hyper Beams, which I get that that's not reliable. Even Hyper Beam itself can miss. But the fact that they did it made me realize, okay, Hyper Beam is a good move. Arbok stinks, but he's only here because of Hyper Beam. So everything I said about Ekans earlier just applies to Arbok. Moving on. Lickitung, I was thinking of putting him in F tier as well, but he does carry a stab, body slam, and Hyper Beam and Earthquake, and that's kind of it. When I was thinking about it, he's kind of like Tauros, if you really think about it. The main difference is Lickitung is insanely slow. Lickitung even carries Swords Dance, but like I think I talked about earlier with the Nidoran family here, the speed stat is extremely important. If you set up a Swords Dance, you'll most likely survive whatever attack, just because normal typing is good offensively and defensively in Generation 1. But it's not going to matter because you can't really go anywhere with it. You're going to get outsped by something. His special stat's not very good. He's not even really that tanky, and you're just going to get, you're going to get smacked in the face, or in his case, the tongue. So, but yeah, he has Body Slam, which is really annoying. It can cringe you to death. Hyper Beam. So those moves were enough to get him here. Moving on, we have we'll just group them together. They do practically the same thing. Machop and Machoke. They're very slow. Their typing is bad, but they do have access to stab. Oh, by the way, that's another thing that keeps them here as opposed to these guys. These guys, with the exception of Farfetch, they don't even have stab attacks. These guys do. Submission, though, I mean, they did the fighting types kind of dirty in this game. Their whole thing was to have a super high attack stat to probably, I guess, combat like normal types or these guys or whatever, rock types. But Submission has 80 accuracy, and it's not even that strong, and it gives them recoil damage too. But they do have access to Earthquake, Body Slam, Rock Slide. They have really good what's it called? Just physical attacks. It's just that they're slow. They have bad special. They have a pretty good defense. And that's kind of it for their list of accomplishments. Like they can like kill these guys. They can kill these guys down here too. So I thought that was a reasonable spot. Machamp is slightly better because Machamp, well, his stats are better, but it's also because, like what I was saying with Arbok, Machamp is carrying Hyper Beam, so we'll see Machamp later on. Up next is Growlithe. I like Growlithe. Growlithe is perhaps I deemed him to be the most vanilla fire type Pokemon. And fire is, out of the relevant types that I discussed earlier when I was talking about Onix, fire is, it's not bad because I named 7 types there out of, like, I think 15 in this generation. But fire is probably one of the weaker of the 7, like 5, 6, 7, around that range. So he just carries Fire Blast and Flamethrower and Body Slam. He has agility, but, like, it's not really going to, you know, you're not going to be... The opponent's not going to be freaking out and shaking in their boots when your Growlithe gets double the speed because you're not really going to be killing that many things. Fire and normal is it's okay coverage. Rock types will completely destroy Growlithe, especially the ancient Pokemon. There's a million water types in this game. The water type that's kind of what gives them an edge over fire. You know, with the limited tools we have in Generation 1, most of the fire-type Pokemon will basically just have fire and normal-type attacks. So, and there's just so many water types crawling around that you kind of need more stuff going for you, but his stats aren't really that high. They're kind of like middle of the pack, so that's kind of why I put him here. Up next, we have a group of water-type Pokemon. I'll just kind of put them all here. I'll save Shellder and Kingler because I think they do something functionally slightly different. These guys, it's kind of like with Growlithe. They're kind of just like, for lack of better terms, honest water types. They are, the water types, pretty much almost every water type in this game, if not every water type. Well, I mean, they can learn it, but, you know, because the movesets are randomized, obviously. They might not always have it. But these guys will pretty much always have Surf and Blizzard, which is good offensively. I think I said earlier when I was talking about the Bolt Beam coverage with these guys, the only thing that resists ice is water, so that's kind of an issue that these guys will run into. It's not a big deal, but they, you know, when they run into another water type, it's like two rams kind of butting heads with one another. This one has Double Edge. Squirtle has Seismic Toss. Wartortle has Body Slam usually for damage, and then these three have Rest. But Goldeen is faster. I think it has 197 speed. Seal has a pretty high special. It's like 210. And then these guys are kind of like the middle ground between these two. They have, they're not as fast as Goldeen. They're not as tanky as Seal, but they're physically more defensive. And their speed and special is probably between those two. So that's why they're like this. They kind of just output damage. Like I said, these three can use Rest, but it doesn't... Well, actually, I don't know about Squirtle. I know Wartortle and Seal can, but... It doesn't really work that well just because you're getting outsped by most things anyway, and, you know, you're just going to probably die before you wake up in a lot of situations. Up next is Shellder. Shelder's another water type. I just put him here because this guy's thing is he has Surf and Blizzard as well, but he has Explosion. However, he is just slow, and that's kind of he fulfills the same role, but I think he does it slightly more work because he can just kind of delete something or at least really injure something. You can even make the argument that Shelder's better than Krabby. I kind of like how Krabby has an insanely high attack set, so he can theoretically body slam cringe some people to death. And he has a very high defense stat, just like Shelder, and then he's got the crit Crab Hammer, of course. That's kind of it. He also has Blizzard, too, which I don't really think Kingler gets. Not that Kingler would want to get it, as we'll be discussing later. So that's the water type guys for this group. Now, here's where things get kind of interesting. Now we're going to be talking about grass types. So the grass types in Generation 1, with the exception of Executor, I'm talking like OU, like if you were to actually like fight for real on Gen 1, you know, OU, they're all bad except for Executor. Executor is actually good. The grass types, it's not one of the relevant attacking types. You know, it's good for, like, you know, water, rock, ground. I get that, but, like, you know, there's other things like electric and ice and stuff like that. And I guess the main thing is they are just very slow, so they're not inherently very good. But I had a hard time ranking the grass types. It was kind of like when I was speaking about Ditto earlier, where it's just the inconsistencies. So what makes them really good and very threatening, and you should probably ideally have at least one on your team on a Generation 1 random battle at least, or even OU. Although Executor would be fulfilling that role if we were talking about OU. But random battles, you have sleep powder. It's so obvious. Every single grass type has sleep powder in this entire game. They all have it. They're all going to do it. It's not a secret. So obviously, it's in the opponent's hands to determine who they want to be the sleep follower, which is really good. It's just that I was debating of maybe putting in C tier, but I thought D was a little more appropriate just because, like, well, one reason is because sleep powder, at the end of the day, it's really overpowered, but it is only 75 accuracy. So there are situations where you just can't put the opponent to sleep. They just kill you faster than you put them to sleep. And you're very slow too. So I mean, that's not, outside the realm of imagination. It does happen sometimes. And if that happens, it's such a big, huge blow to the team. You're down a Pokemon. Like, if you start off turn 1, which this happens a lot, you see a sleep user. If they just simply connect the sleep powder, the battle is effectively like a 6v5, right? But if you miss it, if you don't ever get anyone to sleep, it's the complete opposite. It's you got reverse Uno. Now you're down 5-6. So that's the problem. It's just their inconsistency, and they're slow, and their damage output is relatively low. Although I do like how these guys are carrying Razor Leaf, which is a cool move, but they don't even have like a guaranteed crit, I don't believe. Up next is the Oddish line. The reason I think they're slightly... okay, well, it's all RNG, right? We'll never know, but I would prefer them over these guys because if you didn't know, I didn't know this for a long time, the Bulbasaur line does not learn Stun Spore. They cannot learn it. They have Body Slam, obviously, but I think I would rather just simply have Stun Spore and give up the damage for a slightly more reliable chance of paralyzing the opponent. And obviously they're carrying Sleep Powder, and that's about it. They don't have Razor Leaf, so it's a bit of a toss-up between the two. That's where they are. It's, the Sleep users, they're tricky to rank. They are. Because sometimes they look like they're S tier. It's just that they're just not super consistent, and even if they do put somebody to sleep, it's like, okay, well then what? You switch into something that's going to destroy them in like 2 attacks, and you can't really hurt them back. And, yeah... And they could also have a sleep user of their own in the back to, return a favor. Up next is Tangela. Once upon a time, I actually almost got swept by a Tangela because I think their moveset was Sleep Powder, Stun Spore, and then they had Growth and Mega Drain. Tangela has a very high defense stat. And by having Growth, obviously your damage output with Mega Drain is higher, so you can get more HP back, and your defense goes through the roof too. So some of these moves that hit him on the special side, such as Fire and Ice, even flying on the physical side, if you get enough Growths up, it doesn't really do too much. It's just, he's not going to run away with the game because he's just slow, and Mega Drain's just a very weak move. But it did almost happen to me one time. Next up is Venonat. It's, another sleep user. Venonat's just higher than these guys simply because Venonat is literally faster. It fulfills the same exact role as, not these two, but these 4 right here. It has Sleep Powder and Stun Spore, and it's just slightly faster, so that's why. I mean, if you're going to be a sleep user, speed is kind of important, so that you can outspeed the opponent and just cheese them. And that's kind of it. And then he goes for Psychic. He has no stab. His damage output's very low. But he has a chance of, like, perhaps dropping the opponent's special stat. And then you get KO'd. You bring in somebody more appropriate to take care of him with their special stat down. So it's an okay support Pokemon. Up next is Butterfree, which is... I didn't even mean to do this. But I don't know if you guys ever heard, like, the fan theories that Venonat was supposed to evolve into Butterfree. Maybe you've never heard that. But yeah, that's a thing. And then they like scrapped it the last second. Now that I'm sitting here looking at it, they kind of do look related. Like, yeah. If you told me Venonat evolved into Butterfree when I was a kid, I'd believe you. Butterfree literally does the same exact thing as Venonat. The only reason I put Butterfree ahead is just because it's slightly faster. I think its typing is worse, but it's slightly faster. And that is literally it for Butterfree. It also has Hyper Beam, but don't worry, that 145 base attack isn't going to scare anyone. I'm sorry, Butterfree. Golbat. Golbat is just Zubat, but guess what? He carries Hyper Beam. His stats are also, I think, noticeably better, too. I think Zubat's speed off the top of my head might be like 204, and then Golbat's is, I think, 217. So he's actually faster than a good chunk of the cast, and, you know, you can just... He's going to get a guaranteed Confuse Ray off, and then your life's just going to be kind of annoying, but it's the same problems as Zubat. He's just... His stats are slightly better, and he's carrying Hyper Beam. So it's kind of like the whole Arbok Ekans thing. Like I said, you'll be seeing that theme. So that's Golbat. Up next is Pidgey. Pidgey, I swear, is like a good luck charm because I think the game thinks that Pidgey is like the worst Pokemon known to man. Which I don't think, I mean, he's not very good, but I don't think he's the worst. So it's like when you get Pidgey, the game has to compensate by giving you other good Pokemon. But Pidgey's alright because... He has an okay speed stat. It's somewhere in the 190s, I believe. His attack is okay. And he has access to Double Edge, which is a base 100 power move. But I think Pidgey he's okay because he does get absolutely hard-walled by any rock type and literally the ghost types. But he has consistent damage output. And I was thinking maybe Pidgey should be an F tier, but... I came to the conclusion that Pidgey has like a sort of a pseudo Hyper Beam because he's one of the few Pokemon in the whole game that gets priority, and it is Stab as well. So he has a Stab Double Edge and a Stab Quick Attack, right? So after the damage calculations and the modifier and the blah 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 blah, it's comparable to that of a Hyper Beam. So I think he's more reliable than Farfetch'd. You also see a trend in this tier list where I'm basically comparing Pokemon to other Pokemon below them because it's Generation 1. There's not too many different Pokemon. There's not too many different roles. There's just a lot of Pokemon trying to do the same thing. It's just who does it better. But I preferred Pidgey just because Pidgey does do slightly more damage than a Farfetch'd Body Slam because Double Edge is stronger and he has Quick Attack. So, but yeah, it's pretty bad typing, and that's kind of it. He also has Sand Attack. I mean, nothing to rely on, but he has that, and it does work once in a blue moon. So I think it was just enough to get him into D tier. Up next is Eevee. It's basically the same exact thing as Pidgey. It gets hard walled by the same people. Blah 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 blah. I think Eevee's slightly better than Pidgey because it is better defensively. It's slightly harder to get rid of, and the normal typing is better than normal and flying because of the weaknesses that come along with flying, like when I mentioned Farfetch'd earlier. But yeah, strong double... Oh, another thing too is Eevee has access to Body Slam. I do think Body Slam I prefer Body Slam over Double Edge, but I think Eevee just gets literally a Body Slam, Double Edge, and Quick Attack, and it can have other things too, like Reflect and Sand Attack. That's nice to have, yeah... But don't worry, I still think Pidgey's better than Farfetch'd, even though Body Slam's slightly better. Anyway, moving on, we have Mankey. Mankey is pretty fast. He has a high attack stat. I think it's 230, and his speed is maybe like 212. He's very fast. He's just very frail, and kind of like when I talked about Machoke and Machop. He has like decent coverage moves, but I do think these guys hit much harder. Another thing holding back Mankey is he does not have access to Earthquake, which is one of the best physical attacks in the game. These two do. But Mankey is fast, so he can kind of come in and, I don't know, revenge kill something. He has Rock Slide, so if he's up against a flying type, he might have a moment here and there. Submission does okay damage. It's just whatever. He gets low kick too, but I wouldn't really rely on that. He's just very, very frail, and he has a bad typing. Hitmonchan is very similar, but I think I like Hitmonchan slightly more just because it has a better defense stat, so I'm not getting completely pulverized into the ground, but he is slower than Mankey. He gets like Mega Kick and stuff, which I don't know why. He's Hitmonchan. Same kind of issues as Mankey. He doesn't have an Earthquake like these two, which I kind of like, but he is faster and, you know, punches you in the face, that sort of thing. You can even argue that these guys should all be right next to one another, but I like Hitmonchan. So So, that's that for the fighting boys. The fighting types in this game, they're all just kind of lacking. And you know what else is kind of lacking? The poison types, which if you couldn't tell by my F tier, they kind of got done dirty in this game. See, unlike Ekans and all these guys, they actually do have a stab poison type move. The problem is it's Sludge. And Sludge is, I think it's base 65 power, which is just so messed up because that means after the stab, it should be, what is that, 65, so 32.5. So it's just like 97.5. And poison is so bad offensively. I think it's just good for grass and I believe bug. I always forget how it works with poison, but whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is you're pretty much almost never going to click Sludge, so it's like a wasted move slot. But you do get Thunderbolt and Fire Blast, which is okay. It's like they have a stab, but they don't ever even use it. And these guys have Body Slam. I didn't really know how to order them. I think I'm going to choose this one because these guys have a noticeably better special than these guys. These guys have more HP. I think he has more attack, though. What makes them good, you can even maybe push these guys into C tier, is they have Explosion. It's actually one of the strongest explosions in the game, just because they have very high attacks. It's just that they can't take advantage of their stab because Sludge is just so insanely weak. So it's kind of like a really, really bad like Geodude line where they have a high attack set and explosion and they're slow like Geodude, but that's about it. They don't have a good stab move. They have decent, like I said, the Thunderbolt and Fire Blast thing is okay. And just because, you know, that's good coverage, so they can kind of, they'll usually, unless something bad happens, they should be able to take down about one Pokemon with them. If you're in a really good situation, you can bring them in on somebody and kind of be like this weird revenge killer and kill them with your Sludge or whatever, Thunderbolt, and then you blow up the next Pokemon. But yeah, and their typing is bad, so it kind of holds them back a bit. And they're slow too. So that's that for the poison guys. We're almost done with D tier. Up next we have Execute. Execute is kind of like, I thought this was a good spot for it because it's a sleep Pokemon, just like these guys, and it's an explosion user. So I thought, okay, well if I just fuse them both together, well then this should be a good spot. It's okay typing just because it has the psychic typing, which is kind of carrying it. But that's about it. It's just very, very slow. And you know, it has Mega Drain. But Mega Drain is so insanely weak. So you kind of just really have Sleep Powder. I think it does have Stun Spore, but I'm not too sure about that. But for sure, the main reason why is because it has Explosion and Sleep Powder. So this is almost guaranteeing you're taking somebody out with you. But if you're really, really lucky, kind of like what I was saying with these guys, you can put somebody to sleep and then blow somebody up after that. That's the ideal situation. So yeah, these guys are kind of pushing C tier. And then for my final Pokemon, for the kind of like the low mid tiers, I guess, because they're all kind of mid, is Dratini. Dratini is basically these guys, the Nidoran family, but it got done slightly better. The speed is comparable to these guys. It has Bolt Beam coverage just like these guys, but it has a Thunder Wave, which is very useful. Thunder Wave is just a guaranteed paralysis, unlike Mr. Ekans over here. Defensively, I think the typing is... I'm not really sure. There's no offensive dragon type moves, but I mean, you do get a resistance to, you know, the four starters, fire, water, grass, and Mr. Pikachu electric types. But you do gain a weakness to, you know, ice. So I guess defensively, yeah, it's probably better just because you have some resistances, so you can, you know, send it in as Dratini is basically a support Pokemon, and what makes Dratini a pretty decent unevolved Pokemon is I think it's the only unevolved Pokemon, and Dragonair too, the only not fully evolved Pokemon that learns Hyper Beam. It doesn't always get it, but it can have it. So I would say the ideal moveset with Dratini is just Thunder Wave, Blizzard, Thunderbolt, and then Hyper Beam. So, but yeah, but Dratini's speed is not very good. It's about like 176, so it's kind of like this support Pokemon. But yeah, that's about it. It can kind of just get destroyed by ice, which is fairly common. And I think that's that for the D tier. So to wrap up the D tier, they're basically Pokemon that I believe are, they all have uses. It's just that you might not always get the uses out of it because they kind of all have like inconsistencies. They're also all not too fast. I mean, I think the fastest one it looks like it's Golbat, but then he's a meme lord. Mankey's very frail. You know, they just have, you know, weaknesses. And some other Pokemon on this list just have a lot more strengths is the thing. But, you know, these guys, it's also just their inconsistencies. Like, we have Sleep, which is super overpowered, and Explosion, which, you know, that's always fun. It's just that, you know, they could switch, you know, sack off a weaker Pokemon, or, you know, send in a Ghost or whatever to be immune to it. That sort of thing, and then you can miss Sleep Powder, so you can even argue some of these guys should be C tier, but we'll leave it here for consistency purposes. Alright, that's D tier. Moving on to C tier. These are Pokemon that I would consider to be like mid tier, you know, average, middle of the pack. And sometimes they have their moments, sometimes they don't have their moments, but they usually have their moments. So the first one I'll be talking about is Horsea. Horsea is basically just like all these water Pokemon here. It's rather vanilla, but I kind of like its stats better. It's on the faster side, kind of like Goldeen, but it has the special stat of like Seal, and I don't know why, but it has pretty high defense like the turtle guys, so it's a all-around pretty good mix. I'm going to put Seaking slightly ahead of Horsea, just because Seaking has, for some reason, a very high attack stat. It's not super useful, but it comes in handy sometimes, and it gains access to Double Edge and Hyper Beam. You know, that whole theme with the whole evolved Pokemon getting Hyper Beam. Yeah, here it is again. Okay, next we have the Bellsprout line. The Bellsprout line to me is kind of like a middle ground, a healthy middle ground between the Ivysaur, Gloom. I don't know why I picked those two. These two evolutionary lines, because these guys are not too fast, kind of like them. I think they're slightly slower than these guys, but faster than these guys. But they have Razor Leaf like these guys, but they also have Stun Spore like these guys. And they, you know, could have Body Slam. Victreebel can also have Hyper Beam. So that's why I think they're slightly more reliable. But it's the same kind of like inconsistency problems I talked about earlier. And Grass isn't really that strong. I think it's just nice to have them both together. Up next, I've got Paris and Parasect. This is debatable. I was thinking of putting them in D tier, but I chose C just because Paris and Parasect, they're just really, really bad. Like, they are insanely just bad. They should be in, like, F tier, but it's just the simple fact that, one, they have a sleep move, which gets them into D tier, and me, personally, I do like how it never misses. Okay, my bad. 1 in 256 times it will miss, but most of the time it's not going to miss. So it's the only guaranteed sleep in the whole entire game. And that's kind of the extent of their accomplishments. I just like having that in the back of my head. Like, okay, I have Paris and or Parasect. This Pokemon is god-awful, but it does guarantee more or less kind of like a kill. And then maybe I can get a Body Slam off on this next Pokemon. And they do carry Stun Spore too, so, you know, you can maybe paralyze something. So it's some guaranteed support. Big air quotes around guaranteed, because, I mean, you got a 4 times weakness to flying. You got 4 times weakness to fire. You're weak to ice, which is pretty common. I mean, you got a 4 times resistance against ground. So, I mean, that's cool. And water. So it's kind of hit or miss. But if you play your cards right, you should be able to pretty successfully get a free sleep off. So that's why I like it. It's just guaranteed sleep, which is nice. Up next, Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl is interesting because it has it is insanely fast. I believe off the top of my head is the second fastest Pokemon after Electrode, and it has a pretty high attack stat. And then that's kind of the end of its accomplishments. It has good moves. It has Fire Blast, Double Edge, Hyper Beam, which is cool. It's just that it's its typing. No, that's kind of it. It's its typing. Rock and flying defensively, it is not what they would call cash money. You're weak to water, which is common, electric, which is common, ice, which is common. Your special solo that you can't even really switch into fire to reliably, and or psychic, you know. But I mean, he does have, I mean, he's fast and hits kind of hard, but once again, because of his typing, he has no stab either, so his attacks don't do too terribly much. But it's a decent coverage. I mean, it's the same coverage as like Growlithe, you know, fire and normal type attacks. It's just that Aerodactyl is now missing stab, which Growlithe actually does have, but Aerodactyl has good enough stats where, I mean, if it gets hairy enough, you could perhaps say this is like a late game sweeper to kind of just hyper beam through everything. That is a possibility, but other than that, you're not going to get too terribly much out of it, because, you know, it just doesn't really do like insane, stupid amounts of damage, and it's weak to some vital attacks. Up next is Dragonair. This is pretty simple to explain. It's just Dratini, but just slightly better. It has ever so slightly better stats. It even gets the same exact moves. It's the same exact type. It just does it ever so slightly better, so I put it in C tier, and no other reason. Up next we have, I'll group these next guys together. I couldn't really tell which one was better than which, but it's the fighting type bros right here. They're it's just the fighting type, unfortunately. Like, I do think on paper they're pretty good, but then they kind of get destroyed by, well, one psychic, and two just really like special attacks in general, which I've already discussed this already in the video, how the major attacks in this game are in fact special. So just by having a low special stat, you're kind of opening up the doors to more problems. And then even offensively speaking, it's not too good. It's just good against normal. But they do have good stats. Machamp has, well, I'll go from right to left. Hitmonlee, I think it's slightly better than Hitmonchan just because it has a high jump kick, which is 5. I think it's 5 more power and 5 more accuracy than Submission, and I don't have to take recoil, and I'm doing a little more damage just because Hitmonlee has a little more attack and speed than Hitmonchan. I actually have gotten a crazy comeback reverse sweep with Hitmonlee before, so he's okay. He has decent speed. I think it's like 213. And then there's Primeape. Couldn't really pick the order of these three, but Primeape is the fastest of the three, 220 speed, which is very good. And it is carrying Hyper Beam, which is very nice. So I think it's better than Hitmonlee. For some reason, I don't know why, it's not exactly what you want to see, but Primeape can learn Thunderbolt. Once in a blue moon, it can be used. And then we've got Machamp, which is just Machoke and Machop over here, but, you know, I guess literally on steroids if you think about it. One of the highest attack stats in the whole game, and it is carrying Hyper Beam. It's just, his thing is that he's slow. So these guys are frail. He actually has some pretty physical defense, but these guys are fast. He's kind of slow. Take your pick. He also gets Earthquake, so I think he would probably be the most useful just for reliable, solid damage. But, you know, overall, they're all okay, but nothing, you know, crazy. Up next, I got Magnemite. Magnemite, I guess I would, if I had to pick the quote-unquote weakest electric type, it would be Magnemite. Which is ironic because Magnemite's actually one of the strongest electric types. It has a very, very high special. I think it's like 254. His issue is literally just because he's slow. He's the only electric type that I would consider kind of slow. I do think Magneton's a little bit better, but I think Magneton has like almost 20 more base speed, give or take. So I think Magnemite's is 166, so he's just slow, but he does hit very hard. He obviously gets completely walled by ground types as well and grass types. But other than that, I mean, he can get a Thunder Wave off and Thunderbolt, and it's pretty nice. He's just slow is all. That's kind of it. Oh, okay, so now we've got the normal type dudes here. Let me just place them all. These guys are very reliable support Pokemon. They can carry... They all will be carrying Thunder Wave, and sometimes even Sing. Pretty much the really best times is... with these guys is to basically switch in as, you know, like a flexible pick. These Pokemon can actually be used against like the higher tier Pokemon or even the S tier ones to just swap them in and just paralyze something. Because some of those Pokemon, they're just so good that you kind of almost need to paralyze them to, you know, ensure that something good's going to happen. These are some of the best Thunder Wave users in the game just because normal's a good typing. The only thing good against it that does super effective damage is fighting. And they have enough bulk to basically withstand usually a couple hits. If we're not factoring in like a submission from these guys and it's just, you know, a regular hit from whoever, they can usually survive on average, I'd say 2. So die on the 3rd hit, assuming you're actually using pretty hard hitting moves against it. So you have so usually it goes, you know, you go with the Thunder Wave and then you go for Body Slam, perhaps Blizzard. You know, they have decent coverage moves. It's just that they're all slow. Their stats aren't very good, but they have good typing and they're all carrying Thunder Wave. So it's a reliable thing to get done in case you see somebody like, I don't know, Alakazam, you switch into Jigglypuff and then you just paralyze and Body Slam. That's a very good exchange, giving this Pokemon up for like Alakazam. It's just that you don't always control what your opponent goes for, so you might be giving Jigglypuff up to paralyze and injure Pidgey or something. So, but it is reliable and it does something pretty much almost always. Up next is Venusaur. Venusaur is I didn't notice at first, but he is literally the fastest grass-type Pokemon in the game. He has 192 speed. I think he's even faster than Blastoise for some reason. I think Blastoise is 191. And that's kind of why he's here. That was enough to put him, not really far ahead, but I think I like him more than Victreebel, because even though Victreebel is carrying Stun Spore, like he's like the blend of these guys. I just like how Venusaur is just fast, and his stats are also noticeably better than Ivysaur and Bulbasaur, so he does hit fairly hard with his Razor Leaf, and it's always going to be a crit. He also is carrying Hyper Beam, or can be carrying Hyper Beam, rather. So, that's that. Up next is Venomoth. Venomoth is, I would say, in terms of inducing sleep, he's actually one of the best in the whole game. I would say, in my opinion, of course, the 3 best lines for just putting the opponent to sleep, nothing else, not actually doing damage or contributing, just simply putting them to sleep. The best ones I would say is Paras and Parasect, because they have Spore and it just literally never misses. And then Venomoth, because Venomoth is the fastest sleep powder user, which is 75% accuracy, which is not good, but I think his speed's 204, which is pretty fast. And then he has also Stun Spore on it, so he's kind of like a glorified Venonat and Butterfree. And I mean, we'll get some later, but I would say the 3rd best sleep using line is the Ghost line. They are the fastest sleep users in the game, but the problem is they have Hypnosis, which is less accurate. So you can take your pick of whichever one's your favorite. I think Venomoth is a good middle ground. It's a pretty good support Pokemon. It's kind of like these guys, except that it's carrying, you know, Sleep and Stun Spore. But once again, you could argue that's not a good idea because they're just inaccurate. I mean, that's just facts. You might just be missing every single attack and you might be wasting your time. By the way, these guys also carry Sing. I might have forgot to mention that, so that's another thing. We've got a lot of support people here. Like Dragonair, I would consider to be support. Sleep users, Sleep and T-Wave users, more Sleep users, and then just decent damage dealers here. That's Venomoth. Up next, okay, we have these are starting to get a bit bunched up right here. I'm going to have to make some more room. But we have some Fire-type Pokemon coming. They're still rather, not really unremarkable, but not like the strongest of the strong. I do think they're better than Growlithe because, well, let's just go one by one. Charmander and Charmeleon are, they're faster than Growlithe. I think their speeds is in like the 200s, which it's okay. It's pretty good. They carry Slash, which will just do more than, you know, Growlithe's Body Slam. They also do carry Body Slam, and they even have Swords Dance. So I wouldn't really count on it just because, you know, their typing and just their moves and just overall stats. It's good, but nothing like really good where you can kind of run away with the game. But they do have Swords Dance and all that. Obviously, Fire Blast and even Submission. So if you got a Swords Dance, maybe you can punch, you know, Onyx in the face and kill him with Submission or something like that. So they get some points for that. Vulpix, I don't remember the exact speed. It's about around as fast as these two. It's, you know, same idea, Fire Blast, but and Body Slam as well. But Vulpix has Confuse Ray, which is I think it's better than like Golbat because it's not quite as fast. But you know, Vulpix is now carrying an actual stab move that does hit pretty hard. That being Fire Blast, and it can even learn Quick Attack too for priority. So that's cool. And then we have Flareon. I think a lot of people don't really believe in Flareon. I think Flareon's alright. Flareon to me is like a very good version of Eevee. Like if you think if you disagree with this and you think Eevee's C tier, well then to me Flareon would have to be B tier. Flareon is just strictly better than Eevee, and it's because Flareon has, for some reason, an insanely high attack. It's not really conducive to the typing because you being a fire type, you know, you gain access to fire type stab moves, but that's a special move. But Flareon has a very high attack. Well, he has a very high special too. So he has like, what I'm trying to say is Flareon can actually output some pretty good damage, but they can't really be really good just because of They're just slow. I think their speed is 174, which is, yeah, relatively slow. I think that's even slower than Farfetch'd. But yeah, they do hit very hard. It's kind of like, I guess, Growlithe, but like a lot stronger. It's like if Growlithe and Eevee kind of like fused together, where now you have access to a very strong fire move, and you have a very strong body slam. I think it literally does more than Eevee's, even though it's not stab. That's how high its attack is. And Flareon is also carrying a Quick Attack, which is priority like Eevee. But unlike Eevee, it has Hyper Beam. So I thought that was a pretty fair spot. I think it's just considerably better than like these two. Or it's not like it's noticeably better. So I do think Flareon, I think it gets a lot of hate. Some of it is wanted. Some of it is kind of questionable. It's definitely the weakest of the Eevee evolutions. Oh no, Pidgeotto, you're not that good. Pidgeotto, I'm going to put them together with Spearow and Doduo. I do think this is also the order I would give them. Pidgeotto is, I've already talked about Pidgey, which was in D tier. It's very simple. Pidgeotto simply just has slightly better stats, right? I think it would go in C tier. Because I talked about Pidgey, and I think Pidgey has like I called it a pseudo hyper beam. Well, I mean, if Pidgeotto's stats are just slightly better, well, then it has a slightly better pseudo hyper beam, which is good, you know. And the pseudo hyper beam I'm talking about is it has access to double edge and quick attack. So when you fuse both of them together, it's about comparable damage to hyper beam without having to commit to that attack, and you don't have to miss too. I do think I prefer Spearow and Doduo more just because they have, I don't know why they did this to Pidgeotto, but, or the whole line actually, but Spearow and Doduo have Drill Peck, so flying is not one of the 7 main attacking types that I've discussed several times already, but it is nice to have it just because it is good against, albeit they're kind of lower tier types, but Bug, Grass, Fighting, I mean, that's a good, not a lot, but that's a decent amount of Pokemon across all 146 you're going to be battling. We have to subtract 5 because of Homeboy, Caterpie, Kakuna, all those dudes in Magikarp. They're not here with us, but, you know, against 145 Pokemon, having an extra stab to help out with some more Pokemon, I think is noticeably better. I put Doduo slightly ahead of Spearow just because Doduo can have Body Slam. I've kind of talked about that already. Double Edge obviously does more, but you can kind of look at the opponent and be like, okay, which one would be better? If they both guarantee 2-hit KOs, you obviously would always want to go for Body Slam because if you're faster and you paralyze them, then they have a chance of getting paralyzed. They skip their next turn. Or even if they're faster, then you paralyze them and then you outspeed them the next turn. So that's why. If you can 2-hit a Pokemon with both Double Edge and Body Slam, like I guarantee 2-hit, you always want to go for Body Slam. So it's nice having that flexibility. And I also think Doduo is slightly faster. So yeah, they're pretty good. Their evolved forms are a little better, as you could probably guess why. And then I'll have Rattata. Rattata is very closely related to these birds. I just put them ever so slightly ahead just because I've discussed this already. I kind of just keep repeating myself if you couldn't tell. But the theme we're talking about here is it's just their typing. These guys, well, not so much Spearow and Doduo. They actually are getting something out of the flying, but particularly Pidgeotto is getting hurt a lot from being a flying type because it doesn't even have any flying type attacks, but now it's gaining a weakness to electric and ice. So Rattata basically does the same thing as these guys, and it's about as fast as these guys too, and does around as much damage. But it's also carrying Super Fang for the ghosts, which Pidgeotto would struggle with, and it has Blizzard for ground types, which these two would struggle with, and obviously Grass, and every now and then the Dragon, Dragonite being 4 times weak. So it's nice having that. It also has Body Slam too, and it can get Quick Attack, so it's alright. Rattata is just insanely frail. It's one of the frailest Pokemon, but it has a good typing and good attacks and pretty good speed, so C tier makes me happy. Up next, I have Kabuto, a water type Pokemon. I didn't group it with these two because I thought Kabuto was a little bit better, but not quite B tier material. Just because Kabuto, rock typing is a very interesting type I learned in this game, which I'll talk about more when I get to the Geodude and Rhyhorn line. But I like how it does kind of give you like a quadruple resistance against fire, and we've already seen some fire types here, and these guys kind of hit pretty hard against most of the Pokemon. Well, now with Kabuto. Kabuto completely hard walls them. Now these two do get submission, but it's not going to do too insanely much. It'll probably still be like a 3-hit. And Kabuto has Slash. It's not too fast. I think it's 183 speed, but it has good, it has the usual ice and water combo, and it has Slash, which is good for just consistent damage. But the rock typing, I think, helps it a good amount because it can be a very hard and infuriating wall to get rid of. But it's not like insanely crazy useful. You could even argue maybe you could switch the spots of these two, but I ran into Kabuto a lot, and like it's like whenever you have a fire type, they just keep that Kabuto the whole entire battle. It's so annoying because it hits hard enough where after you switch out of it in front of its face, it's going to punish you. That's Kabuto. Up next is Psyduck. Psyduck kind of surprised me. I thought he would be higher, but I kind of decided on this just because his base stats are like really bad. His typing is good. Being just a pure water type is good, I think. I mean, you're only weak to water and grass. Grass isn't even that common of an attack. And wait, what did I do? Oh, electric. Yeah, you're weak to electric and grass. I don't know if I just said that. But anyway, his speed. So, okay, the thing with Psyduck is he gets, Surf, Blizzard, and Amnesia. This is this is our first Amnesia user. But I do think Psyduck's the weakest just because his stats are just too low. Even after the Amnesia, he doesn't hit that hard. It's going to be somewhere in like the mid to high 300s, I believe. And really the main thing stopping him from being a higher tier is his speed is just not good enough. So even if you do set up an Amnesia on whoever is slow down here, and like this D tier, whatever, chances are that there's just too many Pokemon that'll come and ruin your fun anyway. But, an occasional Psyduck sweep can happen if you, pay very close attention. You're like, oh, well, my opponent ran out of Pokemon who outspeed Psyduck. I think Psyduck's speed is 185, by the way. And if that's the case, then yeah, you could save Psyduck and maybe get something going. But even on the physical side, he still gets wrecked by like things like these Hyper Beam users and stuff like that. Like even like these chicken dudes, these bird dudes can really hurt Psyduck and potentially two-hit them. And Psyduck, he needs 2 blizzards to kill them. So it's all right. And okay. And then I just have these guys left. These guys, they almost made B tier. I actually did initially have them in B tier, and I still see them being a tier higher. The reason I'm just selecting C is because, and we'll get to this later, but I think the rock ground type Pokemon in Generation 1 random battle specifically, I think they can be more beneficial but they're kind of all doing the same job. Like pretty much almost all the ground type Pokemon are in fact doing the same thing. They're just here to wall electric type Pokemon. They're all here to be pretty slow. They're all here to have pretty good defense. They're all here to spam pretty hard hitting earthquakes. And that is about it. But yeah, I think whereas, like, if we get to the S tier, if you have, like, a bunch of the S tier Pokemon, you'll destroy everyone. But, like, even though these Pokemon are very good to have, I wouldn't want to have all of them, you know? The ground typing is very polarizing. I would only want one of them. I don't even care which one you give me. But if I had to order it, it would probably go like this. Just because these guys have a much higher attack stat. Their Earthquakes hit a lot harder. But these ones do have Blizzard, so they can actually... like, if these two fought, these two would win because of Blizzard. And it's also... you know, something good for, like, the grass types, the dragon types, the flying types. Ice is very good. It's just my main thing with these guys is I just want to, you know, have a good relationship with electric types. Oh, and poison types, too. I mean, they're not very threatening, as we can see here, but, you know, you can switch into them and spam earthquakes, and it's a pretty good time. But yeah, I'll explain... these guys a little more when I get to the rock type dudes. But yeah, that's kind of it. They can't really be too terribly high just because they are not... we're going to call them solo viable. Like, I can't just have Sandslash on my team and destroy everybody. It's kind of like a situational counter Pokemon. But it does hit it very, very hard, which I like. Let me double check. Okay, yeah. So that's all for the middle of the pack guys. Some of these guys could even be higher. Some might even be lower. But yeah... you get any of these Pokemon, I think you're probably gonna have a good time. Okay, we're about like halfway there. Now we're entering like pretty good Pokemon's territory. These are like the upper mid, above average guys. These are like the upper middle class citizens in the world of Pokemon. These guys have it pretty good, but they're not wealthy rich, not quite. Up first, we have a million water types. I'll just put them all here and go by one because they're similar, but they do slightly different stuff, I guess. But they're all pretty good. So first up is Dugong. Dugong is a big step up from Seal. It has Stab Blizzard. It's as simple as that. Its stats are significantly better. It's just tankier, and now it has Stab Blizzard. And Blizzard is just a unusually good move in Generation 1. It was so unusually good, they literally had to nerf it to have only 70 accuracy because of how unusually good it was. So it's tanky. I think the Ice typing defensively may hurt it a little more than it hurts, or helps, because now it's neutral to taking fire damage. It's now weak to fighting. But you have a quad resistance to Ice, so that's cool, I guess. But yeah, the defensive things don't really hurt too much in Gen 1 because it's Gen 1. Times are just much different. Ice is good. So having a Stab Blizzard with good special is good. Cloyster is kind of the same thing as Dugong, significantly better stats than Shelter to put it like multiple tiers above. And just like with Shelter being, I'd say, slightly better than Seal. I think Dugong can be better, but I just like having Explosion because it'll just delete anybody. So you have a strong Blizzard, and Surf obviously, and then you have insanely high defense. We're talking like maybe almost as high as useless Onyx, except Cloyster isn't useless, and you have Explosion, so it can do several things. Up next is Blastoise. I didn't realize this at first, but I discovered from, making this that Blastoise is very similar to Vaporeon, which you wouldn't expect, but I just looked at the stats, and Blastoise is actually faster. Its special is a little bit behind, but its defense is a lot higher than Vaporeon. So they both kind of fulfill like this tanky water type. Whichever one is better, I guess it depends on you. I chose Vaporeon because it doesn't happen a lot, but I have gotten a Vaporeon set before, which was Surf, Blizzard, the usual stuff, but it had Acid Armor. It's the only Pokemon that gets Acid Armor in Generation 1 random battles. So, like if you set up Acid Armor, you're like, it's very hard to kill you because your weakness was your defense stat. Now you have a ton of HP, a bunch of special, you can rest it off, so It's not really sweeping potential, but it is just, it's kind of hard to remove. But Blastoise does that too. He doesn't have setup moves, but he does also have rest. And get this, Blastoise, which gives him a big edge over Squirtle and Wartortle. Bro is the only water type in the game that has access to Earthquake. So in other words, if you have paralyzed an opponent's electric type, or if they've just been hurt or whatever, Blastoise could potentially take one, whatever the situation may be, and delete an electric type. And it's also good for, hurting other water types. It's not super good, but, it's water types resist water and ice, so it's nice to have something else. And Earthquake is just a very good physical attack. Up next would be Tentacool. Tentacool, I was thinking of putting them higher, but I think they were lacking some tools. But Tentacool is kind of fast. He broke the, I would say once you get over 200 speed, you're now kind of fast. His is like, I think 204, but he has a very high special. I think it's even higher than Vaporeon. So he's kind of like Vaporeon, but just like faster, slightly stronger. So his thing is he just kind of comes in here and just does a ton of damage. He's kind of he has a few weaknesses such as electric, ground, but I mean ground. The Pokemon using ground type attacks, he's gonna outspeed them all and destroy them anyway. And then psychic. Did I say that right? Electric and psychic, yeah. So he has enough threats to kind of keep him in check, I suppose. But unchecked, he just does a lot of damage. A lot of these Pokemon moving forward, like I would say B tier. Now that we're upper mid, these Pokemon are all officially. They're just doing a lot of damage, I've noticed. Like, these guys are just kind of reliable at doing something or putting somebody to sleep or some support and sometimes doing damage. No, these guys just hurt. Okay, next up is Seadra. Seadra is a strictly better horse. He just has better stats and is carrying Hyper Beam. That's literally it. I know, guys, just use Smokescreen. One day I'll click the Smokescreen button. And then we have Poliwrath. Poliwrath is, I believe, it might even be the only Pokemon, now that I'm thinking about it, that is, I believe, weaker than its unevolved forms, which I don't really think is a hot take at all. I think it's the only one like that. It's just Poliwrath, okay, well, he has good things. I don't really like his typing. He now has gained a weakness to Psychic, which is kind of common. He has good stats, but his problem is he's just slow. Like I think his speed's like 174. He's much physically tankier than his unevolved forms, but he's so much slower. It's not really a big problem with Poliwrath, but I guess another issue, which we'll be actually kind of seeing a little more on these higher tier Pokemon, is their movesets. So because they're good, they need to have good moves. Obviously, so what I'm trying to say is like for example, I didn't mention this earlier, but like this line, the Jigglypuffs, the Clefables, all these guys, they get counter. Well, counter in Generation 1 is not a very good move. It only works against normal fighting type moves. I'm assuming you already knew that. It's just not good, right? So when you see a Pokemon that gets a sus move that's kind of like a wasted move slot, and the thing with Poliwrath is he has like weird things that he wants to do, and I've seen he'll get amnesia and then earthquake and submission, which are physical attacks, and then he'll have surf, and then sometimes he'll have rest, but then he doesn't have a hard enough hitting surf blizzard coverage. His move pool is also all around the place. So what kind of holds him back is his speed, his typing's not that big of a deal, but it hurts him a little bit. And just his move pool is just weird. I've noticed it. That problem doesn't usually happen too often, but you'll see it. I'll point it out when it happens. So that's kind of the water type squad. They all kind of do a little bit different things. I didn't really know how to separate, so that's just their very, very rough order. I'm sure it's all completely wrong. But anyway, moving on. Man, this video is going to be forever. Executor is just much better execute. It has its special is so high that its main weaknesses would be fire and ice, but because it's just so high, it's I mean, it depends on who's hitting him, but he can survive 1, Sometimes 2 hits. So that's a potential sleep powder, explosion, psychic, whatever. It's just kind of the same thing as execute, but the stats are just strictly better. Also, can be carrying hyper beam, whatever. It's that sort of thing. But that's really it. It's just the same exact thing as execute, but just better stats. It would be, I guess, the best grass type. It's also good at fighting other grass types, assuming it doesn't get put to sleep, just because, you know, most of these grass types are part poison, or they don't even, like, resist the psychic. Psychic, man, that psychic from this guy, it hurts. I think he has, like, 238 special. Enough of Executor. Up next are 3 Pokemon that I've basically already talked about, so I can keep it relatively short. It's the birds, it's the trio, not the legendary trio, but we got Pidgeot, Fearow, and Dodrio. It's just what I talked about earlier with Pidgey and then Pidgeotto, Spearow, Doduo. It's literally the only difference. Oh, there's 2 differences that puts them in B tier. I do think they're noticeably better. One is obviously their stats are just a little bit better. And 2, and the much, much bigger reason that will separate them is they are all carrying Hyper Beam. I mean, like, it's kind of weird. Like, they definitely benefit way more from being normal than flying. The flying does hurt them. It helps these 2 a little bit. Pidgeot just gets hurt, but he is a big upgrade from Pidgeotto. I mean, this guy is like, I think his speed's like maybe 214 or something. His attack is around that high. He hits pretty hard with Hyper Beam. I mean, that's a stab Hyper Beam. Like, these Hyper Beam users are some of the strongest in the game. They just kind of get held back with their typing and sort of like their limited move pool. Like, they can get hard walled by, you know, rock types. Like, even Kabuto can stop these guys. But they're all pretty fast. They've got Hyper Beam, you know, Double Edge. It's really the same thing as I said as these guys. Fearow is, I think Fearow and Dodrio is slightly better because it has Drill Peck, so it gives another avenue of approach of dealing with bug, grass, and fighting types. And then I think Dodrio is the best just because it has Body Slam. So if you have a chance of 2-hitting any Pokemon between Body Slam and Double Edge, you would want to click Body Slam for the chance of paralyzing them. All that good cringe that I've already said. So moving on. I like those guys. Now we have some fire types. We've got Ponyta, Magmar, and Ninetales, which of course I'm going to group them together because they fulfill pretty similar roles. So Ponyta is insanely fast. It's one of the fastest Pokemon in the game. I think it's like 230 something, maybe 34. You know, it's kind of like basically, I guess it's like all the fire types I've kind of talked about. I guess the most similar one I could compare it to is maybe like Growlithe. It doesn't have Hyper Beam because it's not fully evolved like Flareon is, but it's just so fast. I mean, when you have a Pokemon this fast, I mean, it does help out quite a bit. It is a big noticeable jump because, like, Growlithe, like, if your opponent's going crazy, well, let's say a Dodrio Hyper Beam, well, Dodrio's special isn't that high, but Growlithe could get blasted by Hyper Beam, but Ponyta will, in fact, outspeed it. So these speed tiers do kind of matter. It also carries Stomp, which you would think is useless, and it usually is, but with how hacks work in this game, I mean, I have gotten myself... I one time 1v1'd an Ammonite with Ponyta, if you can even believe it. And Ammonite resists 4x Stab, Fire Blast, and it's resist Stomp, and that's not even Stab, and it's a weak move. It's just because I flinched him a million times. Ponyta has Body Slam and Stomp, so, you know... It's not a reliable thing, but I have done it before. Magmar is not quite as fast as Ponyta. Well, these 2 are very similar, Magmar and Ninetales. Well, Ninetales is just a strict upgrade of Vulpix. It's just faster and has higher stats. Magmar is ever so slightly different just because it is carrying Psychic, which I gotta be honest, isn't like that useful. It's just another attack for a Pokemon that may resist your fire types, but Magmar also carries Body Slam, so you'll probably be clicking that more than Psychic anyway. But what makes these 2 extremely infuriating from time to time is the fact that they have Body Slam and Confuse Ray. They're already faster than most Pokemon. So these guys are basically as fast as like Golbat, who I put in D tier, but they also have Body Slam, making, you know, Para-Cringe you, which Golbat cannot do, and they have a Stab, so... A Stab Fire Blast, I mean. So these guys, they can be kind of annoying. I do like them, though, because they're annoying. Up next, we've got a couple of electric types. I'm going to group them together. Magneton and Pikachu, they are a bit different. Magneton hits insanely hard. I do like Magneton. His speed stat, it's not a big deal, but I think it does hurt a little bit. But the reason it doesn't hurt that much is just because Magneton can literally just click Thunder Wave and then paralyze you and then start spamming things. But I just mean that it hurts just because, you know, you could send in, let's say Magneton's kind of hurt, Dodrio can show up and Hyper Beam, that kind of thing. Whereas other electric types, by the way, most electric types are insanely fast. They would outspeed Dodrio or whoever, a water type, and then, you know, put them out of their misery. Magneton can't really do that, but it does hit very hard. I think it's like 259 or so, very high special. You don't want to get hit by a Thunderbolt. And electric is pretty good offensive typing. It just kind of gets stopped by let's see, ground. That's the big one. Grass, which, you know, those Pokemon aren't too powerful to begin with. Other electric types, which isn't really a big deal, because, you know, if it's an electric versus electric thing, it's kind of like two water types fighting where, you know, it's just going to take forever. But yeah, Magneton's speed isn't that big of a deal, but a lot of damage. Pikachu, I'm going to put slightly ahead of Magneton. It is far frailer than Magneton, but the problem that Magneton had, Pikachu doesn't really have. It has Surf. So those ground types, which are the big problem, Pikachu isn't going to be one-hitting them, but it'll two-hit them at least. If they're hurt enough, it can finish them off. All the rock ground type Pokemon, it actually can one-hit them if you didn't know, from full health, which is kind of funny. Pikachu's special isn't very high, but yeah. Also, Pikachu is insanely fast. Pikachu is one of the fastest ones in the whole game. I think it's like 242 speed. It's even faster than Ponyta. I think it's the fastest Pokemon I've put on this list so far. So, yeah, it's just Pikachu gets hold back because it is so insanely frail on both the physical and special side, and its HP is just very low. So that's Pikachu. Oh, up next, we've got some pretty fun Pokemon, I think. I do like these guys. I'll go ahead and group them all. We've got 4 more water types, but I didn't think they were so good to put them in A tier. Just because I've noticed the water types in this game, they're very good. The random battle ones, well, even in, I guess, OU, they're good, but random battles, water types are one of the best in the game. I would probably put them as number 2, maybe even 1. There's just so many that can do so many different things. So, starting with Kingler from right to left, I really like Kingler. Kingler, if he gets up a Swords Dance, oh man, that's like devastating amounts of power. This guy has insanely high attack, one of the highest attacks in the game. It's like Machamp's level. He has insanely high defense, and kind of his only weakness is his, I don't think his HP is very high, but more so his special is very low. I mean, I don't know if he'll get one hit, but Pikachu might be able to one hit him. Magneton will definitely one hit him. Just things like that. He can't even eat up like 2 psychics or something. But the physical side, he does very well. And his speed is 189, which is what kind of stops him from being any stronger in a higher tier. He just can't really run away with the game with some of these Pokemon that are lurking out here, particularly the electric types. Any electric type, I mean, that's just a delete button for poor Kingler. But yeah, water and normal offensively, it's actually not too bad because, you know, like rock types can stop the normal types, but he has Crab Hammer, which is always a crit, by the way, for the rock type, so he doesn't have to worry about that. But yeah, Hyper Beam from that guy, it's scary news. Kabutops, it's almost the same exact thing. Kabutops is slightly faster. I checked. I think it's 194, which is ever so slightly faster. Slightly lower defense, slightly lower attack, but I think a higher special. He doesn't have Crab Hammer, but he has Surf. Crab Hammer can miss, Surf cannot. It just kind of like take your pick. I think Kabutops also can get Slash, but it's the same thing. It's a Swords Dance Hyper Beam user. Same exact thing. And then you got these two, which I think are about on par with these guys, but I think they're better than these guys. They have a really high special. It's kind of like Tentacool special level, or even Vaporeon or Seadra, but I just thought that their typing, it's kind of like Kabuto, but it like because Kabuto can't learn Swords Dance. That's why Kabutops is here. It learns Swords Dance and Hyper Beam. That's what sets him apart. But I do think these two are actually more similar to Kabuto than Kabutops. It's just a Pokemon that just super hard walls any fire type. Some of these harder hitting mons like Dodrio, Fearow, Pidgeot. And it just comes in and it punishes very hard if it does swap into a Pokemon that can't really do much to it. So that's the kind of the benefit that comes with some of these rock types. They just completely stop. Like, it's not a big deal, but like, let's say the opponent has like, let's say Pidgey or Eevee. Well, I mean, if you have Amistar, that's a free switch into that guy, and his Surf, his Blizzard, whatever, it just hits really, really hard. Whereas if you swapped into one of these guys with Eevee, it wouldn't hurt that much, but it's just the fact that you just cannot get rid of Amistar. Because of how hard it can be sometimes, you can even use Rest. It doesn't happen a lot. It's just, you just got to know what you're working with. If you look at the opponent's team, you're like, oh, I see a bunch of fire types or Pokemon that just can't really do much. You send an Amistar, it's just a bad day for them. Oh, up next we have another one of these Swords Dance sweepers. As you can see, I wasn't kidding when I said these guys do a lot of damage. It's the same thing as these two. Pinsir is just simply slightly faster. And defensively speaking, I think he even has better typing too. Like, I know bug typing is completely it's just god-awful. It's a joke. But these guys will get outsped by, pretty much almost every electric type and die. But Pinsir, I mean, there's the fire types. But it's just, I just thought it should be slightly higher just because there's so many water types in Pokemon that can stop fire types, like rock types, fire types, other fire types, that I thought it was kind of safer to do, which puts it slightly ahead of it. But it's the same game plan. It's just Hyper Beam, Swords Dance, Slash, Submission, Seismic Toss, Body Slam, that kind of thing. I've almost been swept by Pinsir a few times. It probably already has happened. I just can't think of it. Yeah, the moment he gets it up, it's pretty good. Oh, I don't know if I said this already, but he is faster. I think it's somewhere, his speed's like in the low 200s, so he's even faster than these guys, and his typing, I think, is more conducive to getting a sweep more successfully than these two, and he has very high defense, too, and I think his special is not very good, but I think it's even better than Kingler's, which helps out, obviously, defensively. Up next, we have Drowsy and Hypno. The best Pokemon I could compare these two that I was thinking about was actually these guys right here. The normal type dudes. They kind of do the same thing. They both have Thunder Wave. They both hit with like a Body Slam, some kind of reliable damage. They have Hypnosis, they have Sing, so technically Hypnosis is more accurate by a little bit. They have Seismic Toss. So yeah, they're very, very similar. I do think Drowsy and Hypno are better. They're doing the same job. I just think that they do it better because of their typing. Psychic is just probably the best typing. I don't think that's a really hot take at all. And it has access to a very strong Psychic attack, which is pretty good offensively as well, and a very high special stat. So they're pretty defensive, but they are slow. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think they are faster than Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff, but I think that they're about on par with Clefable, but they might even be faster. So I just think that they're just upgrades of those guys. I don't know why I left Charizard there. Charizard, spoiler alert, I think he's higher than B tier, believe it or not. But up next is Raticate. Raticate is just Rattata, just slightly better stats, and just like what I was talking about with these bird dudes, he has access to Hyper Beam, which is a big deal. Raticate's 220 speed, so he's very fast. He can definitely, he's a late game sweeper. He is one of them. I mean, a lot of these Pokemon could classify as late game sweepers. He is no different. He has I think what makes him better than, like, say, Pidgeot is, one, his typing is better. He doesn't have this flying type weakness to deal with. And it's not very common, but, like, if they have the Ghost, there's only 3 of them in the game, but he can hit them with Super Fang, which, does half. That's nice, I guess. And he has Blizzard, which makes him better than these guys. These guys cannot hit the rock ground types. Raticate can also hit just the regular ground types for a little more. So just, you know, Blizzard, Body Slam, Super Fang, Hyper Beam, that kind of stuff is what lands him here. He can't be too much higher though because he is very frail and his game plan is kind of, I guess we'll call it vanilla. Now we have one of my favorites. I like Beedrill a lot. He is a setup mon. It's a sweeper. It's just like these guys. I don't know his speed off the top of my head. I think he's faster than Pinsir though. I think he's faster than all these guys. And he has Hyper Beam just like all these guys. It's the same game plan, but I think Beedrill would be slightly better just because, I'll be honest, it's not very reliable, but him just having the option to use agility helps. It happens sometimes. I mean, I did a battle a few days ago. I had, I don't know how this happened. I think my opponent just got paralyzed a million times, but I sent out Beedrill like midway through the battle. And I had a ×4 attack and ×2 speed. I just literally killed everything with Hyper Beam. So just him having that option is cool. Beedrill, and this isn't really that important, but he's also... His Generation 1 is a funny time to be alive. He's literally the only Pokemon that has access to a bug-type attack. So he has... like, if he's faster than the electric type, the psychic type, which... you know, he would need, like, he's faster than these two in, like, Jinx, but not, like, the Aberline. But, whatever. My point is, whether he's faster or not faster, my point is he can go for Twin Needles, what I'm saying, which is another tool to have, and for the grass types, which helps, and even the poison types. So, most of the time you'll be clicking Hyper Beam, but if you are aware that you can get rid of your opponent with Twin Needle, you can do that because Hyper Beam has 90 accuracy. So it can miss sometimes. So just having that extra option is nice. And it's stab too. So that's Beedrill. He's pretty cool. Up next is Articuno. We'll talk about Articuno and Moltres at the same time. So I'll start by saying I do think Articuno is better. But I forgot the numbers. But I think Moltres is 3 levels higher than Articuno. It might be like 73 and Articuno 70, I believe. Their game plan is kind of the same thing. Articuno is, I believe, the hardest. Well, like without, without considering stat boost from Amnesia or whatever, it is the hardest hitting Blizzard user in the game. I think it has like 245 special, and Blizzard, as we know, is a very good attack. And it can freeze and stuff like that. And he has Ice Beam too. So if you're aware that you can get rid of the opponent, you know, it's just like what I was talking about with Beedrill 2 seconds ago. You can just go for Ice Beam and not risk the miss. Moltres is the same thing. It just does it, but with fire, and it carries a Hyper Beam too. His physical attack is considerably better than Articuno's. It's kind of like, who do you prefer? But I don't know. It was very close. I think what... Yeah, I don't know. They're both not very good against water types. Water types just resist both their stab. There's a million water types. They're both good against grass types. I mean, I guess Articuno does hit flying types. He hits bug types and Moltres. I don't know. The point is that, judging by their stats, I deemed... Oh, wait, no, I know why. I put Moltres slightly ahead because Articuno, I think his base speed is like maybe... I think it's 189, and then Moltres is like somewhere in the low 200s. So I was like, okay, well, you got just enough speed, a little bit more. I'll give you the bit of an edge, but it's the same game plan. You just spam very, very hard-hitting attacks. Moltres, I didn't think could be higher just because Moltres' typing defensively, I do think is not very good. It is immune to ground, but every single ground, I swear, it's like almost every Pokemon that can use Earthquake is carrying either Rock Slide or Blizzard 2. He's 4 times weak to rock, he's weak to ice, he's weak to electric, he's weak to water. These are all very common types. So he doesn't have like any useful resistances, except he resists like fire, I guess. So he's good against other fire types. That's about it. For those two, it's kind of the same thing, just take your pick. Up next is Snorlax. I thought he would be higher, but just from my experience of using Snorlax, it just doesn't it doesn't work too well with the Gen 1 random battles just because, you know, Snorlax is so good that his level's low, you know, from being... He's just nerfed a lot. I would say... And I think I mentioned this earlier with... it was Poliwrath, the whole moveset thing. Snorlax, his moveset... I don't really get it, man. Like, I've gotten movesets where he has, like, Amnesia, and then he doesn't even have, like... Blizzard, and or he doesn't have like rest. I'm like, what is going on? Like, if you have Amnesia Snorlax, you need to have rest and Blizzard. That just makes sense, but that doesn't always happen. Like, you don't always get those three. That's what I would want, but I do think, though, the best moveset for Snorlax that I like is simply Body Slam, Earthquake, Blizzard, Self-Destruct. You would think resting works very well with Snorlax. It just doesn't. He's just nerfed a lot, so a lot of people can like 3-hit him before he can wake up and do something. He's the only Pokemon I think he's faster than is Slowpoke and Slowbro. So ideally, I think the plan is you see a Pokemon that's either weakened or ideally paralyzed. That's even better. You send in Snorlax to be a revenge killer. You click Earthquake, Body Slam, whatever. And then on top of that, Snorlax, I mean, this obviously isn't guaranteed. This is the ideal situation, but Self-Destruct Snorlax is literally the hardest hitting base move in the game because when you factor in he doesn't get Explosion. Explosion's the hardest hitting move, but because it cuts the opponent's defense in half. But Self-Destruct does the same thing, but Snorlax is a normal type, so it actually gets a stab boost, which makes it the hardest hitting attack if you didn't know. I don't know how to word that exactly. Like, after you factor in the stab, it's the highest base power move. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Well, after you factor in the stab and you cut the opponent's defense. Yeah, I didn't know how to word that any better, so sorry. But yeah, it just hits very, 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 very hard. But you can't really set up and destroy everyone with Snorlax like I thought you could. And then, alright, so we're basically coming to the end of this tier. I'll actually go one by one this time. So this line, I was thinking of putting these ground types, Cubone, Sandshrew, and B tier, which they absolutely could. But as weird as it is, okay, so rock and ground types are very interesting is the word that I'm going to use. Out of the main types that I've already talked about in the past already, they resist normal and fire, which is, you know, good. They also resist, like, flying and poison, but nobody really cares about that. And then they have a 4 times weak to grass, which thankfully isn't too common. But then they have a weakness to ice, which is very common. And then they're weak to water. And then they also have an immunity to electric. So out of the 7 main types, they're basically... Okay, so they have 3 good matchups. They have... and then, yeah, I would say 4 bad matchups. So the reason why I like them more is just because... Even though it's very polarizing, I think I'd rather have them more. I think there's more upside because, like, for example, they're 4 times weak to water, right? Let's say you have Blastoise and, you know, they're about to go for Surf. Well, to me, in my eyes, if I have Cubone, Marowak, Sandshrew, or Sandslash, I'm still going to get destroyed by, you know, Blastoise. It doesn't matter. Even though these guys are faster and they're not 4 times weak to the Surf like me, in most situations, I've just learned it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But I do think it helps out with, like, with a super hard counter, such as, like, the flying types, like Fearow, you know, somebody like Eevee, Farfetch'd, these guys, these poison guys, they have a fire, electric, poison, some fire type Pokemon too. What also separates these guys from Onix is I learned that their specials are about the same, but the reason these guys don't get destroyed as much as Onix is just because they have a lot more HP, and that's why. So these guys, it's the same thing. It's what makes Onix good, but they don't really have the terrible things about them. They are much slower, but like I'm not here for speed. I'm here to switch these guys in as hard counters and send out a very hard hitting Earthquake. These guys hit much harder than our old friend Onix in D tier towards the bottom of the list. That's what makes them good. Like, no, as long as they have some kind of Pokemon, like let's say Magneton. When you see Magneton, you're like, awesome, this is perfect. You basically have you have a reverse Uno card for the rest of the battle or until his thing dies. You send this guy into this dude, And then you just click Earthquake or Rock Slide or whatever, and these guys, they actually will have substitutes. So, you're expecting a switch, you don't know if they're going to go into a flying type or whatever, you could set up a sub to play it safe and then go for Rock Slide on the flying type, or you can just click Earthquake if you don't think they have one, whatever. They hit very hard. And then, the next one is just the Geodude line. They're almost the same as these guys. They have almost, literally, almost the same exact stats and everything, same typing. They do the same job. I would just put them slightly ahead because they have Explosion, and I find myself thinking Explosion is more useful than Substitute. Another thing, by the way, if you didn't know, in the RBY battles, that Substitute still gets hit by status-inducing moves. So, Thunderwave wouldn't work because of their ground types. But yeah, you could get hit by Stun Spore or Sleep Powder or whatever, and then you're sad, so... That's another reason why sub doesn't work, because the opponent can just send in whatever and then they outspeed you and then you're sad. So, but with the Explosion, it's not super easy to pull off because they're very, very slow. But the fact that I have the main reason why you want these guys is for electric counters and hard walls, a strong Earthquake, and then the tertiary reason would be the Explosion, which just helps out a little bit. But it's not going to be a big main source of... damage and stuff. You're going to be relying on the other things. And then we're going to put Nidoqueen here. I know I just talked about why I think the rock ground types are better than these ground types. Nidoqueen I just find to be in an interesting spot because it's much, much faster, and that's kind of why. The ground types, they had to have something going against them, and they're all kind of slow. So Nidoqueen is one of the faster ones, I suppose, and it's carrying, it has good type coverage. It has a Bolt Beam. It's basically, these guys at the bomb, except that, she actually works very well. She has an Earthquake, Blizzard, Thunderbolt. So she's got the Bolt Beam coverage and a strong Earthquake and Body Slam, perhaps. So, it works very well. It can even defeat the other ground types by outspeeding them, whatever. Knock out flying types. Good defense. Just all around pretty balanced, so... That's that. Basically a bunch of ground types. Like I said, you can maybe even throw these guys in here. You just kind of need one. I don't care which one. You want one. But to be fair, you don't want two or more. Because then if they just simply have a water type and they get rid of you, you kind of just lose the whole battle. You're just going to get one shot by, all of them. So you just need one. I don't care which one. Just put one on my team. That's that for B tier. As you can see, we have seen some very hard-hitting Pokemon, and it's only going to get scarier as we go up. Moving on to the A tier. Okay, these are basically the best Pokemon in the game. They have a lot of good matchups. They don't have too many weaknesses, but they have enough weaknesses to, I guess, prevent them from being the most menacing people in the country. So we're going to start off with Nidoking. Nidoking's pretty simple to explain. It's just Nidoqueen, but better optimized for Generation 1, because Generation 1 relies a lot on offense and speed, and Nidoking just is slightly faster than Nidoqueen. They have the same special, but Nidoqueen has a higher attack. So Nidoking has higher attack and speed. Nidoqueen has higher HP and defense. This is the more optimal of the two, so I'll put them slightly ahead in A tier. Up next, we have a group of two fire types. This is Arcanine and Rapidash. They're both pretty fast, particularly Rapidash. Arcanine has a higher attack stat. And they both just kind of do the same thing. Fire Blast, Body Slam, Hyper Beam. It's just like, which one do you want to do more of? It just depends on how fast the opponent's team is. If you outspeed them... If you outspeed all the opponent's Pokemon with Arcanine, then you would rather have Arcanine because it does more damage. And if you don't, then Rapidash. Pretty simple. They do get stopped by, I guess just rock types. Because, if this is, a late game Pokemon you might be using. Oh, by the way, these Pokemon are all pretty good in late game situations and can all be sweepers. But if the opponent's Pokemon are just injured enough, you can definitely clean them up with a Hyper Beam. These do reasonable amounts of damage, so. But their typing and stuff isn't super crazy awesome, so A tier is pretty fair. Next up, we have a few water types. I'll actually go one by one with these guys. I didn't think I would put Gyarados this high. You might be thinking, why is Gyarados this high? It's not a really good reason, but it's a decent reason. It's simply because there's just a million water types in this game, and he is one of the very few that has access to Thunderbolt. And that's kind of it. It helps him defeat the other water type Pokemon. I even think you could even argue in some situations, or not even some situations, you could probably think of a decent amount of situations where these water types are better. But I just like having that flexibility. Gyarados just has insanely good coverage. One of the best, how you say, like, type pools? I don't even know. Like, he has a deep move pool with good coverage. It's kind of like what they were trying to do with, like, Nidoran, these guys down here. But, like, Gyarados is just has insanely better stats, and has a Stab Surf, and has access to Hyper Beam. And the one thing that kind of stops Gyarados, now that I was thinking about it, is he has he can dish out a ton of damage, but he's obviously weak to electric. And there is, a few electric type users, and the ones that are really good at it, the electric types, they're just faster, so they'll just come in and just one-shot Gyarados, have a nice day, that sort of thing. But Gyarados can beat up a lot of the guys in this cast. He just has really good moves. Up next is Lapras. It's same thing as Gyarados. It's just like Cloyster and Dugong, but it has access to Thunderbolt. This is one of the Pokemon that you might have a more difficult time. Like, if it goes to rest, it would be it's going to be a more difficult Pokemon to remove, even though it went to sleep. Like, what I'm trying to say is, it can, of all the Pokemon that can use rest in this game, this is one of the ones that can actually sometimes wake up and still continue to do stuff. Assuming it's really good against other water types because it has Thunderbolt, and the water types will often have, like, a water and ice move, which he just resists, so you can't really get rid of him. And then he has access to a very strong Stab Surf. It's just like Dugong, but it has Thunderbolt, so that's kind of why. And then this one is the most different so far of all the water types, I think. This one is very frail, which is bad, but it's very fast. And it has Recover. That's what gives it a lot of points. Staryu, I mean, you give it Thunder Wave, Recover, and it's already a recipe for disaster. Or a potential recipe for disaster. Doesn't mean it always will happen, but the point is Staryu can basically get more or less almost a guaranteed T-Wave on somebody and recover it off. And if you can't paralyze them back or one-shot them or whatever, then they can potentially just, stall you until you miss a turn by getting paralyzed, and then start hitting you with Surf, Blizzard, Thunderbolt, whatever they may have. And that's kind of why, but it's kind of easy to destroy, which holds it back from, like, top tier territory. But man, that thing can be really problematic. Up next, I will just group these guys together. Well, I mean, the water types were also grouped. We've got 4 electric types. We have Jolteon, which is my favorite Gen 1 Pokemon. Electabuzz, Voltorb, and Electrode. I actually thought Jolteon would be like S tier or something, but then I kind of took a step back and realized, okay, we're playing Generation 1 random battles. So, there's a bunch of Pokemon that the opponent can just receive on RNG. And the thing with Jolteon is it is insanely fast. It has a very good special, very good Thunderbolts. It's a great Pokemon. It's just, what do you do if they have a ground type? We've already kind of discussed. This is what keeps ground types relevant. It's just the electric types. Like, they're kind of like two sides of the same coin. It's almost like you could even argue a trifecta, because I've already said how good water types are surprisingly in Gen 1. Like, I wasn't really aware of that until I was making this list, but, like, the electric types beat the water types. The electric types are nullified by the ground types. The ground types destroy the electric types, and then they get checked by the water types, and then the water types destroy the ground types, and then they get checked by the electric types. So, the reason why Jolteon is, I guess, quote-unquote, one of the weaker electric types is just because with all the randomness, the chances of them getting a grass or a ground type, or even an electric type of their own and defeating you, it's actually not as unlikely as you'd think. Like, even the other electric types, like, for example, Electrode can theoretically beat Jolteon with Explosion. Electabuzz could use Seismic Toss, whatever. That's why I think it's the quote-unquote weakest, although I do, of course, love Jolteon. Up next is Electabuzz. It's pretty much the same deal. It's not quite as fast, it's not quite as hard hitting as Jolteon, but it's just that extra flexibility that gives you a little bit of peace of mind. Like if they've revealed that they have a ground type on you. With Jolteon, you would have to go for like something very weak, like Pin Missile or Body Slam, predicting the switch. That's if they switch into them. They could, just stay in and then, and then you lose your Jolteon. But Electabuzz has Psychic and Seismic Toss, which are decent middle ground moves for hitting the opponent in front of you, or what they might be switching into. So, it's a safe thing, so it gives you some flexibility. That's nice. And then I think I would put Voltorb and Electrode slightly ahead of these two because their special isn't as good, but they are, Electrode is literally the fastest Pokemon in the game. I think Voltorb would be second. I'm not sure who's faster, Voltorb or Aerodactyl, one of the two, but anyway, it's just they have Explosion. You're the fastest Pokemon in the game. You have Stab Thunderbolts, which are going to do good damage. You're going to outspeed literally everything. You have Thunder Wave. Oh, by the way, all of them have Thunder Wave, which is also good. It's like they're not really used for supporting kind of like Clefable and all of them. They're just guaranteed T waivers. These guys just They have the option to support if they want to, but they're generally just going to be spamming Thunderbolt, and it's pretty good against most of the casts. What's good against Thunderbolt? We have ground types. We've already talked about that. Another electric type is just two Rams hitting each other, and then the grass types aren't really that powerful. So, yeah. I guess you got the dragons. You got two dragons right here. But they're also just support Pokemon. Yeah, just being able to just spam Thunderbolts. Like, the electric types, I would say, are kind of like a very, very slight, well, like Gen 1 OU, or I guess even the random battles too. I would say the electric types are just a slightly step down from like Psychic type Pokemon. Psychic types are just broken. We all know that. Up next is Dragonite. Speaking of dragons, I was very surprised Dragonite was this high. I thought he was going to be like low B tier, maybe even like C, but then I kind of came to the realization that Dragonite can actually beat like a lot of Pokemon in this game in a one-on-one. I'm not saying he'll come out unscathed. I'm just saying that he can successfully beat people up. Dragonite was the first pseudo-legendary, and he has very high stats. His weakest thing would be, I suppose, his speed. He has 192 in the random battles, but he has, let's see, he's got Thunder Wave, which is a good support move. Bolt Beam, Blizzard Thunderbolt, and then Hyper Beam, and he has one of the highest attack stats in the game. So what really prevents him from actually being stronger is just, it's literally one thing. It's just ice type attacks, aka Blizzard, and every single water type gets that. The ice types get that, and then some other people will just have that. That's kind of the one thing that stops Dragonite. And obviously, he couldn't really just like run away and sweep the whole game just because he's not fast enough to. But it's just, if you have Dragonite on your team, they're going to be able to do something. And if the opponent doesn't have an ice type user directly right in front of them, they're probably going to have to take some damage to get rid of it. And I even learned that like Dragonite, as a matter of fact, if your Dragonite's at full HP and the opponent has a Pokemon that has Blizzard, if that a Pokemon special that they're using, if it's less than 200, you'll actually live. Nidoqueen, Dragonite. Dragonite actually defeats Nidoqueen because it outspeeds Nidoqueen. And even though Nidoqueen is fairly strong, a Blizzard 4-time super effective, Dragonite actually lives, believe it or not. So, and then it'll obviously outspeed them and take them out with their own Blizzard. So yeah, Dragonite's just a good, flexible Pokemon. Just the one weakness is just ice. Up next, we have a very fun group of Pokemon. I like these guys. You might not like them, but they're always fun to see. These guys, the Ghost Pokemon, are literally, so first of all, they're all basically the same. They have almost the same stats. They are, in fact, the fastest sleep-inducing Pokemon in the game. Their speeds are like, it's around like the mid 2 teens, so like 214, 215, 216, something like that. They're pretty fast. They have Hypnosis. If really the only thing that I think makes them bad, in my opinion, is just the fact that Hypnosis can miss. But there's just so much upside to using Hypnosis because you're probably faster than the opponent. And Hypnosis, albeit it's pretty inaccurate, it is still likely to hit than not to hit. And then once it hits, which it just usually does, the opponent's just faster and it usually connects. Not only are you basically taken out of the battle, but you have to switch into a pretty hard-hitting attack because these guys have very high special stats and pretty deep move pools. We're talking like, I would say Thunderbolt's probably their most useful attack. They have Nightshade for just consistent damage. They have Mega Drain in case you want to bring in like your Golem or whatever. These guys can all one-shot them, but like if you're injured or whatever, and they're gonna obviously outspeed you, they can take you out of the Mega Drain if your HP is low enough, so you got to be wary of that. And they even have Explosion, which isn't it's not really good, but like, I mean, it's Explosion. Explosion is just a very good move. And perhaps you could, you know, I don't know, like the opponent is paralyzed, you go for Explosion, you injure them, and then, I don't know, you bring in your Swords Dance Pokemon or something like that. These guys just, they can always bring something to the table, and especially carrying Thunderbolt with all the water types, and, you know what I mean? It's just like what made these guys good, but they also have Sleep, and Sleep is so broken. Oh, and another thing too, I forgot about this too. I've been mentioning them throughout the whole tier list is some Pokemon, they just literally get completely stopped by Gengar. There's not a lot of them, but like, let's say, I mean, they don't get stopped, but any of these guys down here, I guess Ekans would scare them off with an Earthquake. Farfetch literally can't even touch them. Pidgey cannot touch them. Eevee cannot touch them. Pidgeotto, Pidgeot cannot touch them. And then they have a multitude of good matchups. Like, if you already have a Sleep fodder, right, you can't get put to sleep, you can send them in on Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, or Venusaur, and they can't paralyze you because they don't have it. There's just a lot of situations. These guys too, the poison types here. Sludge, you actually quad resist, but then they have such low specials that Thunderbolt Fire Blast won't do much to you. Oh, Aerodactyl too, that's another one. See what I mean? You see what I mean? There's just a lot of situations where they're just good Pokemon, both defensively and offensively, and they're just fast. They've got utility. It's just the only thing that I think keeps them out of S tier is just the fact that they can miss Hypnosis, and they are very frail. They'll die to like anybody's Earthquake. I'm pretty sure Machop can actually one-shot Ghastly, believe it or not. I think I've done that before, just because the opponent, as you can imagine, missed Hypnosis. So it's a bit of a gamble, but it's usually upside. And even if you don't want to go for Hypnosis, it's just nice to have those guys around, and they're very fun to use. Next, we've got a pair of Pokemon I'll be gluing together. Kangaskhan and Tauros. These guys, well, more so Tauros, you would think would be higher tier. I guess probably Snorlax would be one of the most surprising ones. I mean, Tauros is like the king of Gen 1, as some say. He just got nerfed a lot in random battles, that's all. But Tauros and Kangaskhan are basically like Lickitung, who's all the way down here. But they actually work is the difference. So first of all, they have much higher attack stats than Lickitung, and they're pretty fast. Tauros, I believe, is 217, and Kangaskhan's 204. I remember their speed stats, but not really their other stats too much. I know Kangaskhan has more HP, but Tauros, I think, should be hitting harder. They're pretty more even because of the nerfs, because Kangaskhan's a higher level than Tauros, but I still think Tauros is better. Tauros, I mean, to put it simply, there's not really literally any Pokemon, not even the S tiers, that can basically switch into a Tauros attack unpunished. I mean, Body Slam, Hyper Beam, what else do I have to say? He just has a very strong, stab, and it's different from, like, let's say Dodrio, because I do like Dodrio's stats. It's kind of similar to Tauros, but Tauros doesn't have the flying weakness, so he's no longer weak to the common ice, the common electric, you know what I mean? And he has Earthquake, so you send in one of these ghost dudes, oh man, you get smacked by an Earthquake. It's not a good feeling. And Earthquake is also good against a lot of the electric types. The electric types usually, physically speaking, are defensively frail. So it's nice to have. He also has Blizzard. Blizzard will actually do more to the ground types than Earthquake does. Or not the ground types, the rock ground types. So these 5 right here. And it will too at them all. And Tauros can survive these attacks because he has just enough defense and special where it's not really a big deal. I guess what kind of keeps him out of S tier is just because I guess he just got nerfed harder than some of his peers. Kangaskhan is, it's just a Walmart Tauros. The gap is slightly smaller because of the random battle levels, but I was thinking of maybe putting Kangaskhan higher, but then I learned that Surf with Kangaskhan doesn't even like one-hit these guys. So it's just because especially speaking, Kangaskhan is much weaker, so it's much specially you're never gonna click Surf. It's just a waste of time, and then you can get basically two-shot by any special move in this game, depending on, I mean, if they've got an Amnesia up, you might just get one shot. It's that's kind of the one thing that holds it back, but they both got good typing. They both kind of do the same thing. That's why they're here. All right, we're about maybe a little over halfway with this tier. Next up, we have another duo. We're gonna have Zapdos and Raichu. It was tricky to determine who was the best. Like, I know, like, a lot of people will say, like, the best electric type in Gen 1 was Jolteon, which is kind of debatable. I don't know. I've never, believe it or not, I've never really played Gen 1 OU. Maybe I have to start doing those. But yeah, probably the second most common answer, or maybe the most common answer, is actually Zapdos. We'll just talk about Zapdos first. Zapdos has incredibly good typing. He is an electric type, and the one thing that is super effective against electric is ground. He is a flying type. He is immune to it. Congratulations. So he is only weak to ice and rock. Rock is kind of weak, so it's pretty much just ice. A lot of these Pokemon that have the ice moves are also water type that Zapdos just happens to have a good matchup against. So he has a very high special. His speed is, I think, I thought it would be higher, but it's like, I believe 204, and, I think what gives him an edge over these electric types, but not quite enough to put him in S tier, because S tier is just filled with stupid Pokemon, he has Drill Peck. He is one of the very few Pokemon that actually can take advantage of his flying type offensively. And I guess the only other two would be Dodrio and Fearow, because even Articuno and Moltres don't even have flying type attacks. This flying type stab Drill Peck that Zapdos gains also, it allows him to have a better, easier time with the grass types that are, sleep powdering everybody. The bug types, which isn't really a big deal because, there's not too many of them, but it's nice to have. And then fighting types too. I get all three of those are rather irrelevant types, but it's just, the fact that, like, for example, Jolteon has, like, Pin Missile. You know what I mean? Like, I'm almost never going to click that, even though it is 4 times effective to Venusaur, but, like, Drill Peck is just way better and more consistent and stuff, and it has perfect accuracy. And then Raichu, it was tough. I don't know which one's better. I think it is one of these two is the best electric type for Gen 1 random battles. I think I'm going to go with Raichu for a very obvious reason. It is simply because it has Surf. It's kind of like Pikachu, but just tankier. It's not as fast as Pikachu, but just the feeling of me not getting one-shot by anything and everything under the sun is quite comforting, so that's why I prefer Raichu, and I do think it's good. It can survive some of these ground types attacks, like I believe Cubone it can survive, Marowak. I do not think it can survive Sandslash, though, but yeah, just being able to surf on, like, a predicted switch, or if they hard switch, like, into this thinking they can stop you, I don't even think that would ever happen, because everyone knows that Raichu can just one-shot them anyway with Surf. So, it is nice to have. I couldn't really tell. Drill Peck covers for more Pokemon. There's just more, grass, bug, and flying types. But I think the Surf on some of these ground types is more valuable, so that's why I ordered it like that. Plus, I think if they're fighting one another, so another electric type Pokemon, Raichu would just do better because Zapdos, being flying, is now going to be taking neutral damage from electric type attacks, you know what I mean? So he'll also go down to that, and electric is a common type, so as you can see by this tier. So I think Raichu has it slightly better. Obviously, there's the earthquakes and stuff, but you have Surf. So I think that's enough yapping for Raichu. I'm so sorry for this video being so long. I'm surprised you're even still here. Up next is Scyther. Scyther, I also was kind of surprised to put him this high, but so his thing is he's kind of like far-fetched, but like he actually works. Same problems as far-fetched, offensively speaking. He just, no matter what, if Scyther sees like a rock type like these guys or the ghost, he's just completely put out of commission. But it is the fact that he has one of the strongest late game capability sweeping potentials there is that puts him in A tier. Swords Dance, he's already so fast. I think his speed's 232. After a Swords Dance, I mean, it's not that uncommon to see him just clean up everything with Hyper Beam. It's so strong. It's kind of like, I guess like Kingler and Kabutops as well, but he's just so much faster. And another thing too is if the situation arises, they might not even need Swords Dance. They could just click slash if your HP is low enough on your Pokemon, and then you just die, you know what I mean? You just can't really stop them late game. So what keeps him an A tier and not an S? Like, I think I've said why he's strong enough to be an A tier, but I didn't think S was appropriate just because it's his typing. His typing is so bad. It might be the worst typing, actually. I don't know. It just doesn't work. I mean... He's weak to, like, what isn't he weak to? He's weak to, well, let's look at all the relevant types, right? So, normal, he's neutral, okay. He's weak to electric, that's not good. He's weak to ice, that's not good. He's weak to fire, that's not good. He's weak to flying on top of that, that's not good. His special stat is low enough where he'll pretty much get 2-shot any psychic attacks anyway, that's not good. Water, same thing. Like, he just, defensively, he's so easy to take out. Pretty much the plan with Scyther with him late game is, like, if you want to take the Swords Dance route, which I've done many times, is you just gotta look at the opponent and say, can I survive one attack? If I can survive one attack, I'm probably going to go for Swords Dance and then try to end the game like this, and hope I don't miss, obviously. And that's kind of it for Scyther, so I hope that made sense. Up next is Charizard. So here's my opinion. I mean, this whole tier list has been my opinion, of course. I think Charizard's the best fire type in random battles, and it is because I almost grouped him with Scyther, because it's kind of the same thing. He's slightly slower than Scyther, but okay, well, this is assuming you get the correct moveset, so I should make this clear. So the moveset you want with Charizard, the ideal one, is Swords Dance, Hyper Beam, just like Scyther, and then Earthquake and Fire Blast. That is like extremely good coverage. I believe the only Pokemon that can stand up to that kind of coverage is literally Aerodactyl, which is not exactly a very scary Pokemon. Because, you know, Swords Dance, Hyper Beam. We've already talked about with Scyther. The weaknesses that Scyther had was like, you know, the Ghost or the Rock types. Well, guess what? Charizard has Earthquake, man. And just like Scyther, he doesn't necessarily need to set up a Swords Dance because he's kind of strong and kind of fast. So if need be, he doesn't need it, and he's got good coverage. So if the opponents are low enough, he can click Earthquake and stuff. He's got Fire Blast, very strong, hard-hitting fire-type attack. He's very well optimized. I just didn't think he could be S tier, just because it was kind of like what I mentioned with Moltres. I think defensively, this is not good typing either. It's kind of like Scyther's. I don't think it's as bad as Scyther's, but it's not too good. It's I mean, he's quad weak to rock as well as Scyther, and then they're both actually weak to electric and ice, and then Charizard's also weak to water. These are all very common types, so that's kind of what stops him. Like even like he could set up Swords Dance, but like one of these electric types in this tier level, or I mean, dang, even Pikachu could show up at the last second and take out your Charizard. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what stops him. Okay, we've only got a few more Pokemon left in A tier. We have, I guess, another group right here. We'll call them the Psychic group. It should be no surprise to really anybody that's ever played Gen 1 that Psychic types are they're just really broken. They function very well. They are offensively and defensively combined, arguably the best type. The only thing that resists Psychic is Psychic. They're all pretty fast, with the exception of Slowpoke and Slowbro, and I guess Executor. These guys, they function as because their special is so high, they're almost kind of like tanks. They're usually their quote unquote weakness across the board for pretty much all the psychic types is their defense stat, and they usually have probably below average HP. So, you know, a normal type hyper beam like Tauros or whatever is kind of how you quote unquote stop them. It's just that they have a lot of winning matchups to, you know, it's kind of silly to not put them in a very high ranking. So we'll go one by one. Jinx has Lovely Kiss. It's I think Jinx has 197 speed, so we're talking about almost as fast as Venomoth, but like you also have access to 2 reliable stabs, that being Blizzard and Psychic, which makes you a lot better than Venomoth. We have Mr. Mime here. Mr. Mime is kind of like these support Pokemon, like I guess Clefable or all these guys, or more like Drowsy because they're like, you know, it's obviously a Psychic type. It's just the difference is that Mr. Mime is just considerably faster. I think their speed's maybe like 209, which is pretty fast, and he has access to Thunderbolts, which is good. I mean, Psychic and Thunderbolt. I mean, look, dude, like that could stop Charizard or Scyther or something. You know what I mean? Like that's a good extra typing to have. They also have Seismic Toss that can help them defeat other Psychic types. So I think it's usually Thunder Wave, Psychic, Seismic Toss, Thunderbolt. So that's that. And then we have Abra here. I'll explain later why I separate Abra from Kadabra and Alakazam. But Abra is like insanely just strong and fast. I think its speed is, I think it's 239 or maybe 234. And then its special is, it's like maybe 259 or something. And then you have access to Psychic, Thunder Wave, Seismic Toss. That's kind of it. I think the only other good move you could have with Abra, I think, would be Reflect. But yeah, this guy is kind of like, he can be used as like a revenge killer because he has just good offensive relationships against a lot of the cast. Or even potentially a late game sweeper. Really, the only thing that can hinder him is like, I don't know, a Hyper Beam from Tauros. I want to see a Hyper Beam from a lot of Pokemon just because his defense is just that low and his HP as well. And like, I don't know, him getting paralyzed or something. Paralyzed Abra is pretty much a dead Abra because they're so physically weak. So I think I got my point across with those guys. And then we have 2 interesting Pokemon that I didn't think I would put this high. We have Diglett and Meowth, which is kind of weird looking at it like this. Like, why are they so much better than most Pokemon? It is simply because, I don't know how this always happens, but these, dude, people, myself included, like, they just always hold on to Meowth and Diglett. They are some of the best late game sweepers in the entire game. They're very, very, very frail, which, you know, is taking away points, but I don't know how it happens. I mean, like Diglett, I think is 240 speed. Meowth is maybe 237. So they're outspeeding almost every Pokemon with the exception of like, I don't know, Voltorb, Electrode, maybe like Jolteon, Aerodactyl. They're outspeeding almost everybody. They're even outspeeding Abra, man. That's how crazy this is. Like they can kill Abra. You know what I mean? So all you really have to do is just literally don't ever, like if you receive Meowth and Diglett, just pretend they're not even there and try to do the whole entire battle without them. And then you just save them for the last second. If you want, you can send them in as like a revenge killer. Kind of like what I was saying with Abra a moment ago. But then you have to switch back into somebody else. They have to take a hit, whatever. Usually, I just see it all the time. I don't know how it happens, but it just happens. Just them spamming Earthquake, which is one of the hardest hitting moves. It's good coverage. They have Rock Slide too against a flying type that you may have. Oh, you got your Charizard or Scythe or whatever. Well, he's 4 times weak to Rock Slide. He's also got Slash, which is just not a lot, but good damage in case Earthquake's not working. But I think Meowth is slightly better just because the Slashing Machine of Death. It's kind of like Farfetch'd, except this Pokemon works. You know, it just works. That's the difference. Meowth will be carrying Slash, Body Slam. I'm pretty sure it's always Slash, Body Slam. I believe Bubble Beam and Thunderbolt. So remember how Farfetch'd gets, completely stopped by rock types and stuff. Well, Mouth has Bubble Beam, which helps him defeat the rock types and even the ground types. Yeah, and then if he can't successfully slash you to death, they can go for Body Slam, hoping to get a para, or actually, because their speed stats are so high, they could even just straight up crit you too, which that's another thing that I forgot to mention with Diglett and like Abra and these guys. Like, another good thing about, I haven't even mentioned this yet in the whole video. If you're faster in this game, not only are you faster, which is good, but you have a higher critical hit ratio, man. Like, that's what makes them so good too. It's above average critical hit ratio, which helps out a lot. I mean, that's just 2 times the damage, you know what I mean, if they get it off. So, I mean, like, Meowth just body slams you, and then you get paralyzed. You miss a turn, and then they slash you. He could crit you with body slam, which would, in fact, do more damage than slash. Yeah, I was surprised, too. Sometimes they don't look that strong. It's just that when they do work, oh, man, they're working, and you can't really do anything. There's no counterplay just because they're just faster than most of your Pokemon. So, well, that's that. So, that's the why I consider to be high tier. And up next, we'll be talking about the most disgusting Pokemon in the entire game. So, let's look into that. Okay, this is it. The top tier. These guys, I was looking at them, and I thought that what's interesting is a lot of the times they don't even really look like they could be S tiers. They look like they could be A tiers or even B tiers. So they're here because it's very simple. It is because they can destroy you. I'm not saying they will, but man, when they do things and it keeps going their way, you just want to click the forfeit button. So that's kind of what distinguishes S from A. Like, A already had a bunch of good Pokemon, but these guys can just like either break the game or like cheese you or like make your whole game plan revolve around them. We'll start off with the 2 most quote-unquote honest ones. It's just Dugtrio and Persian. It's just I literally just got done talking about Diglett and Meowth, so I'll keep this short. Their stats are slightly better, and they do literally the same exact thing. Also, Persian gains access to Hyper Beam in case it needs that extra damage boost. But because their defense is higher, and of course their damage output slightly higher, and their speed, they're even in a position where they could otherwise survive an attack that would have one-shot these guys, but now they can survive it. Now they can maybe survive even 2, depending on who is attacking them. I even did a battle one time where, like, I think their Persian had like 30% health left, and my Mew went for Psychic, and they literally lived on 1. But had that been Meowth, they'd be dead. So those little things do matter. So it's just enough to put them in here. They're just excellent late game sweepers. You just bring them in and just start unaliving people. It's pretty simple and intuitive. Okay, now we're starting to enter like, oh my god, what did I get myself into territory. Like I said, like, these Pokemon don't always necessarily come off as S tiers, but man, when things go wrong, oh god. So, Slowpoke and Slowbro, they are very, very hard to remove. They only have an electric and grass weakness, and there's actually a few more water types coming up too. Yeah, water, as I said, is very, very good typing, and Gen 1 random battles at least. Slowbro and Slowpoke's defense and HP is good enough where they can't just get like beat up by like physical attackers using like Body Slam, Hyper Beam, or Earthquake. So the plan with these guys is they come in, they paralyze you, then they set up Amnesia, and then you get paralyzed, and then you're sad, and then they might set up another one, they might not, then they rest it off. And the plan is they get back to full. If they can get back to full health with an Amnesia boost, and you have nobody left to finish them off, you just lose. They just hit way too hard. So the optimal moveset is, and by the way, So okay, I'll just say this first. The optimal moveset for these two is Surf, Thunderwave, Amnesia, Rest. I get that they get Blizzard and other stuff, Psychic, but that's the one that you want, so you can take care of all avenues of approach. Because these Pokemon we're going to be talking about are so powerful, one of their quote-unquote weaknesses, if you even want to call it, is the chance of the game generating them a bad moveset, which I wouldn't really call that a reliable weakness. But that's kind of what could happen. Like, if these guys, I've gotten Amnesia, I've gotten Slowpoke before, and he didn't even have Amnesia, so obviously that's not an S tier. It's just, what I'm trying to say is, if the stars align, and they have the correct moveset or whatever, they are going to not necessarily always look like S tier, but they will look just unstoppable, and you will just get cheesed. I mean, there's not too many Pokemon in Gen 1 random battles that can just run away with the whole game. Well, these are a couple of them. And this is the Pokemon that is famously responsible for me going through a half-hour-long Pokemon battle on Showdown. I think it was 159 turns. It was literally my Slowbro versus theirs. And we both had the optimal movesets. And, yeah. And then they basically PP stalled me. And then I obviously died. And then they destroyed the rest of my team. And then I was sad. So that's Slowpoke and Slowbro. Obviously, what's kind of keeping them a little bit higher is literally just the fact that they are slow. It's in the namesake. I guess that's what they were thinking of, keeping these Pokemon from being overpowered. Let's just make them slow. And what do you know? It's the only Pokemon in the game where the speed stat isn't that detrimental to, especially since they're carrying Thunder Wave. I had a really hard time ranking these guys. I don't know. It's so close in the power level that I'm not even really sure. But up next will be Poliwag and Poliwhirl. It's the same exact deal as Slowpoke and Slowbro. They are just they're on the opposite side of the spectrum, we'll call it. They instead of being super slow, they're some of the fastest in the game. Particularly Poliwag. I think it has 240 speed. I think I might be suffering from like the Mandela effect or something, because I could have sworn these were they had rest, but I was looking at like their movesets on like the calculator as I was like trying to position certain Pokemon on this tier list, and I discovered that I guess they don't get rest. They just have apparently they always have Hypnosis, Amnesia, Surf, and Blizzard. So basically the game plan, and like I said, I'm not saying they always work. I don't want this to get redundant, but it could work, and you'll be sad if it works. They come in, they put you to sleep, which obviously, you know, they could miss. Dude, if they put you to sleep and you just don't have enough firepower or something to outspeed it, they get just one Amnesia. Maybe one's not too bad, but two, it's kind of like game over if you haven't already paralyzed them or just KO'd them. It's scary. Like, when you see, like, these Pokemon here, you gotta, like, stop everything you're doing, and you gotta basically formulate a plan to not get destroyed. But that's the same thing. They just do it faster. They're very, very frail, but they're fast, so I think I would prefer that. Up next is Golduck. You might find this to be a weird location for Golduck. I saw a tier list one time, and they put Golduck in, like, maybe C tier or something. I don't know, maybe I just look at the game in a very different lens. It's the same thing as these guys. Dude, I don't care. Give me any one of them. They're good. I just prefer the Golduck because it's a happy middle ground between the two. By the way, this is assuming that you have an optimal moveset, which for him is it's Amnesia, Rest. He for sure gets Rest. I know that. And then Surf, Blizzard. So it's kind of like these two, but he can recover. It's like a happy middle ground. He also is he's better defensively, has higher defense stats. Not quite as high as Slowbro, but you know, it's enough to not get you one shot by everything like Poliwag. And his special is considerably higher. I think like Poliwag's special, it's kind of low. Maybe like 150. So after an Amnesia, it's like 300, maybe somewhere in the low threes. Golduck's special is close to 200, so after an Amnesia, I mean, we're talking like close to 400 or so. Don't quote me on those numbers, I might have totally butchered them, but the point is Golduck, while not as quite polarizing. You know how these two have hypnosis. It's just, for me, it's safer for me, because even with these guys, you got to do like Thunder Wave and resting up and all that. With Golduck, I just have to click Amnesia once, and Golduck's base speed is good enough where if I've seen my opponent's team and I can see who Golduck is faster than, and Golduck's faster than a decent amount of the cast, then, you know, I can kind of clean up. It's just safer that way. Is it better? I don't know. That's just the one that I prefer. So, yeah, just all the Amnesia water types are here, if you couldn't tell, with the exception of Psyduck. He was down here. I just thought Golduck's base stats just put him they're just good enough to put him this much ahead. That's just how I think. I know it looks weird, but it's much easier and realistic for Golduck to rest back up after the amnesias and survive, and then clean up after with its higher base speed. It's easier to do. It's happened more often, and it'll continue to happen more often because of its higher stats. Up next, I didn't really think about this Pokemon. I don't really ever think about this Pokemon too much, but I do like this Pokemon whenever I get it. It is Tentacruel. Tentacruel, I actually think, might be better than all these infamous Destroyer of Worlds, because Tentacruel is kind of like Tentacool, but like so much stronger. It's crazy. Like, his speed is higher. I don't know the exact number. It's almost 220, which is pretty good. And then its special is very high coming out the gate. It's like 240 something. And then it has access to Swords Dance and Hyper Beam. So a Pokemon to compare it to that's, I guess, similar would be like somebody like Charizard. They're almost the same speed, but like Charizard has Fire Blast and then 2 physical attacks, whereas Tentacruel has 2 special attacks to take advantage of its incredibly high special stats, that being Surf and Blizzard. So it's kind of like all the water types that kind of blend in them here, but the ability to just go for Swords Dance and outspeed a lot of Pokemon in the game, yeah, Tentacruel is a very reliable and easy to pilot late game sweeper. You don't even necessarily need the Swords Dance. I mean, Surf, Blizzard is good enough to finish off a lot of Pokemon late game. So definitely a surprising pick for me. But yeah, I was like, oh, Tentacruel is really good. And then I just kind of were putting things together. I was like, oh, Tentacruel is really good. Up next, this is probably to me the most surprising spot of, well, no, never mind. Onix was the most surprising one. Onix I thought would be the worst Pokemon ever, but Porygon is one of the most surprising spots. I did not think it would be S tier, but when I just kind of like stepped back and thought about it, I was like, wow, this Pokemon just has this magical way of making you not want to play the game. Its game plan is very simple. And I kind of briefly talked about this with Staryu earlier, which was what landed Staryu in A tier. Porygon is part of what I call the cringe squad, as we'll be seeing momentarily, which lands them so high up. Porygon stats are very bad. It's like one of the lower ones in Gen 1, just entirely of all fully evolved Pokemon. Well, Porygon doesn't evolve, but you know what I mean. It's very low, but it has good typing. Defensively, it's only weak to fighting, right? And it has the infamous Thunder Wave Recover. Oh my god. What an excellent way to just make people just never want to play this game. It's not like really scary like with Tentacruel, you know, setting up or any of these guys. It's just that it's so reliably annoying that I had to put it somewhere in S tier at least. I mean, Thunder Wave Recover and then Blizzard Thunderbolt, which it doesn't always get at least. So, you know, I kind of talked about this, but the fact that some of these Pokemon might not get their optimal movesets is quote-unquote their weaknesses. But if it gets Blizzard Thunderbolt, Thunder Wave Recover, oh man, you're in for a real time. Another thing too is when you see a Thunder Wave Recover user, you kind of have to like, one of the best ways to get rid of them, if you can't just outright one-shot them or whatever, is to paralyze them. Well, guess what? You know, Body Slam's a pretty, you know, common move. Well, because Porygon is a normal type, it will never get paralyzed by Body Slam. So you need like Thunder Wave or Stun Spore if you want to do it that way. Or you would need to already be set up prior to this with a Swords Dance or Amnesia person And then, which of course that'll destroy Porygon, but what happens if you're not in that situation already? You know what I mean? Like, what happens if you didn't even get one of these Pokemon? Porygon just goes around paralyzing everything, recovering, spamming Blizzard and stuff. Then you get paralyzed 50 times in a row. It's like, oh my god. So obviously there's a ton of RNG behind that, but it's just the fact that you're pretty much guaranteed to get at least one Pokemon paralyzed. So even if you can miraculously, I mean, this is the best case scenario. You send in any one of these 100-something Pokemon against Porygon, right? They paralyze you because you're probably not going to one-shot them unless your name's like Machamp or something. But you hurt them, they paralyze you, then they recover, and then maybe you get a crit or something after you break through some paras. Even in that scenario, the way I see it is Porygon at least did something. Not quite S-tier material, maybe like B or so, or maybe even lower. But the fact that you're paralyzed, they're just going to send in a Pokemon after that to finish you off. So even in Porygon's death, it's still an annoyance. And then just having to just switch around and maneuver around that thing, it's a big pain. Up next, Chansey. Porygon is just Walmart Chansey, I think. There is some scenarios where Porygon may be better. They're actually the same speed. Chansey has like double the HP though, and a much higher special, which gives them access to harder hitting, ice beams and thunderbolts. It's the same thing. You want Thunder Wave and Soft Boiled in this case, and then you want ideally Ice Beam and Thunderbolt. However, Reflect? Oh man, Reflect, dude. Reflect on Chansey? Reflect on Chansey? Thunderwave, Soft Boil, Reflect on Chansey. I have actually gotten that before, and my opponent rage quit. Like, they had like a Dragonite or something, which we all know is one of the hardest physical attackers in the game. I set up a Reflect, paralyzed him, Ice Beamed him. They had nothing. They couldn't paralyze me. They didn't have a T-Waver. They didn't have anyone to set up. Like, they couldn't do it. They left. It's just so stupid. It also has Seismic Toss, which is a good one too. Just for consistent damage output. Because the thing that puts some of these Pokemon so high up is the fact that they have Recover. Recovery was not reliable in Generation 1. There was no Resto Chesto. Ho ho ho. No. Like, you had Rest or Soft Boiled and Recover. Rest is good because it gets rid of the status condition, but it's also not too good because if you didn't know, if you get paralyzed and go for rest, you're not paralyzed anymore, but you do retain the speed drop if you didn't know that. So that's why Chansey is just really annoying. The things that kind of dock points from Chansey, if you will, is the fact that it gets counter, which is just, to me, it's just a dumb idea. Like, I get it, if you hit Chansey with like Body Slam and it goes for counter, it's gonna almost guaranteed annihilate you, but that's a very skill shot move, and it's like, I don't really want to rely on things like that. And when you have Chansey, you need all the moves you can get. You obviously need Thunder Wave and Soft Blow. That is not up for negotiation. Then you need two other things. So I would choose like either the Bolt Beam coverage or like, Reflect and then Ice Beam or Reflect and Seismic Toss or something like that. You don't want to get stuck with I don't know. Sing, yeah. Chansey can get like counter and Sing. I get Sing's a good move, but you don't want it on Chansey. You would rather just have, I don't know, Hypnosis on one of these super fast guys, and it's more accurate. You don't want a move slot waste on Chansey, so that's a thing that kind of weakens it, I guess, is the chance of the opponent having kind of like more or less a wasted move slot. But that's not really a really good nerf, in my opinion. So now we're entering the tippity top of the iceberg. This is where things almost get kind of blurry to me. I'm not even really sure anymore. There's just so much RNG that happens. I didn't even think about this until I was doing the tier list, but Starmie, to no surprise, is very good, but I didn't even think of this, man. Starmie is also part of the cringe squad. Starmie has Thunder Wave and Recover as well. And the difference is Starmie is fast. And it has a high special. It has hard-hitting attacks. It's got, like, Surf, Hydro Pump, Psychic, Blizzard, Thunderbolt. These are really good moves. So it doesn't even have to be a cringe lord like these two. It can be a cringe lord, or it can just come out the gate swinging and just, take care of the rest of your team because it's very fast and has a high special. and wonderful coverage. It's kind of like, it's like if Gyarados had better typing and better and just recovery. I think it's better than Staryu because their stats are almost the same, their move pool is almost the same, but like I like Starmie because the defensive typing gives them an added resistance to Psychic, which is, I guess kind of common. Or not like really common, but rather threatening. And then it gets a stab Psychic if your Starmie receives Psychic. But honestly, any moves you get on this thing won't really be bad. That's the one thing that makes it kind of that I guess dock points is perhaps you might not get the most optimal moveset, but it's not really a big deal because I guess the good news is the opponent doesn't know what you got. So even if you got a stinky moveset, well, the opponent doesn't know what you have. So you can have a move that gets rid of them in one attack, you might not, but it's going to scare the opponent. But just the fact that they get Recover and Thunder Wave, I couldn't overlook that. That was crazy to me. That's insane. Oh, man. And then it's like, okay, then we've got these guys coming up. These guys, it's... maybe they're not better than Starmie. I don't... It kind of... Once again, it depends on the moveset. But, oh, I was going to... I mentioned this earlier. So, they are ahead of Abra. So, Abra, if you didn't know, actually does, in fact, have a higher special stat and speed stat than these two, believe it or not. It's just by a little bit. The reason why these two are here is because they learn Recover. It's so stupid. They're basically, the best type in the game. And, they're special tanks, basically. The only way to really... Their weakness is, I don't know, you paralyze them and then you hyper beam them with your Tauros or something like that. But it's just the fact that they have so many good situations. They just do good against... They either do good or outright destroy most of the cast. They're at least taking one Pokemon. But like I said, man, I mean, you can't paralyze them or something like that. They could T-Wave you, Recover. They're pretty much just laughing at your face. They already have one of the highest special stats. They are going to have Psychic. It's just a matter of what that last move is. So where they get their points docked, if you will, is they might get Counter, which is the stupidest thing ever. I think it's even dumber on these guys than Chansey. Because it's like, who am I supposed to survive? Like, even one time, I've done this before. Like, I don't know which one it was, if it was Abracadabra or Alakazam, but I went for Counter on Persian, and then I ended up just getting paralyzed anyway, and I just lost. It's a bad luck charm. Even when it works, it doesn't work. So, the optimal moveset with these guys that you want is obviously Thunder Wave and Recover, and then you want Psychic. And I'm not really sure which one's better for that last move slot, but it's either Seismic Toss or Reflect. The two will complete rather two different roles. If you have Seismic Toss, this will allow you to go rather toe-to-toe with other Psychic types, albeit there's not too many. So maybe the Reflect one is better. So Psychic, Reflect, T-Wave, Recover. If you get Reflect on it, it's just like Chansey, but I would say even scarier. Because now you're a physical wall, you're a special tank, you have good typing, you have Stab Psychic. It's just crazy. The only thing that could really stop it is like another Psychic type. It comes in, like, I don't know, Starmie, paralyzes you, and then I don't know. It's scary, man. I've seen a few forfeits to that one too. Okay, so that's that, and to no surprise, well, I don't know. This looks like kind of a cop-out answer, but like, I guess I'll explain myself. Mew, the most similar Pokemon actually to compare it to is more like Chansey and Porygon, believe it or not. But I just believe that, well, one, it's a lot faster than these two, and I think that its bulk made it more reliable, and it has better just moves, and it can dish out better damage. So, it's the same thing. You got your T-Wave, your Soft Boiled. You have access to a Stab Psychic. He gets other things too. He gets Thunderbolt. He gets Blizzard, so you can have some Bolt Beam action. He has Explosion, surprisingly, which is it's actually all right, and Earthquake. So he has literally the hardest hitting moves in the game. And it's kind of like, dude, they're so hard to position, but I think they're slightly better than these guys just because he is physically tankier. And that's it. I mean, because like I said, if this guy doesn't have Reflect or something or whatever, he'll just get killed by any Hyper Beam ever. Mew can just, like, if you go for Hyper Beam on Mew and it doesn't kill, he T-Waves you, then he recovers again, and so on and so forth. And I just thought that the typing defensively was better than these two. Like, even Chansey, even though it's good defensively, its defense is just so low where Hyper Beam and Earthquake can get rid of it. Porygon just lacks HP, so I think Mew is a big step up from those guys. But it's very hard to rank. But that's where I'm going to rank it. I guess it's not really that shocking because I think Mew is the second lowest level in the whole game after, wow, guess who it is? It's number 1. I didn't think it would be him, but I do think it is him. And I didn't really want it to be him. Just the more and more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, it's him. And the reason why is because looking in this tier alone, he basically does what several of these other Pokemon do, but all together. So Mewtwo's weakness, if you even want to call it that, is he has a low defense stat. So it's kind of like, like Kadabra and Alakazam. So I guess we could compare it to that. However, his special stat is, about as high as his or theirs. His speed is actually slightly lower, but what sets him really apart from the pack is obviously Amnesia. Amnesia Mewtwo is like the scariest thing ever seen on planet Earth. It's so scary they had to make him level 60. That's the one thing that might be keeping him away from number 1 on other people's, thoughts on this game. And I can understand that. I mean, that was a massive nerf, but even with the nerf, it's like, oh my gosh. So he sets up, right? So he sets up like these guys. He's about as fast as these guys too. I think he's about the same speed as Tentacool. He might be slightly slower. So he's pretty fast. Amnesia is just better because it's better than Swords Dance because it's you're now taking advantage of 2 stats in one, being your special attack and special defense. Then he has Psychic, which is just very good offensively because the only thing that can stop it is another Psychic type Pokemon, which isn't super common. There's only look around. There's like not too many of them. But as always, just like all these other monsters up here, Mewtwo has Recover. So he has Amnesia, Recover, and then he'll probably have Psychic. And I've seen him with Thunder Wave, which would effectively make him just like Mew, but even worse because unlike Mew, Mewtwo can set up. So he'll actually specially get even stronger, unlike Mew. And these guys too. Like he has the sky is his ceiling. So really the only thing you could do to stop him was, Hyper Beam him or something. So I would say, for me, I don't really think I need the Thunder Wave cringe support like how Porygon, Chansey, and Mew do it. That's usually how those 3 do it. These 3 don't really rely on that too terribly much. They actually want to try and end you. So I think my favorite set with Mewtwo would be Amnesia, Recover, and then Psychic and Blizzard. There's not too many things that can stand up to that. There's just I think it's literally just Starmie, Slowpoke, and Slowbro are literally the only Pokemon in the game that can stand up to Psychic and Blizzard. That's just the moveset that I would prefer. Because they're Water and Psychic, they can resist it. But I mean, look at all these Pokemon that don't resist it. So he's outspeeding you. He's crushing you with consistent power. He's recovering. Even if he doesn't have, let's say he doesn't have Blizzard, he has Thunder Wave. If he has Thunder Wave, he's basically just a better version of Mew because he can set up Amnesia and just recover it off. I know I'm repeating myself, but he's just doing what all these guys are doing, but just fused together all in one, and he's faster too. He has a super high, these Psychic types can set up. He can set up too, but he's faster. These ones are, they can set up, but they're a lot weaker than Mewtwo. And Mewtwo's type coverage is better. This one has Swords Dance, but Amnesia is better. These guys have T-Wave, Recover, Cringe, but I mean, he does the same thing. And then these guys kind of do that too, but then he just has far more power. He can set up Amnesia. I think I've made my point. Just said like the 50 of the same things over and over and over again. So I hope I got my point across. Oh, man. Well, I think I should just call it for now. This video is insanely long. This has been my longest video in probably a while. I'm not counting my Let's Play videos, which I know none of you watch. But if you do, I appreciate the support. Nobody likes those videos except me, because I like playing other video games. But if you like my tier list, like it. Comment down below. If you didn't like my tier list, dislike it. I'm sure you will, because everybody loves and hates tier lists because they're so controversial. Because if you don't have all 146 of these Pokemon in the same exact position as every other player on the whole entire planet of 8 billion people, if it's not in the same spot, well, then you're wrong and you're a bad person. But hopefully you don't think I'm a bad person. I have played a few of these random battles before. I think I've done, I don't know, maybe a few hundred or so, or maybe several hundred. So this is just my opinion, and they could obviously be swayed. I even slightly changed some of these spots right before I started doing this too. Before I started doing the video. So of course it's up to change. And another thing too is this is nothing to take too seriously, because you have to remember, if you're playing Generation 1, it's like a casino. Like, there's just a bunch of terrible things that are most likely going to happen to you one way or another. So even if you get Mewtwo, dude, one of my battles not too long ago, I had ×3 Amnesia Mewtwo. I was ready to clean up. I got frozen. So that's just what I mean. That's just what happens, and it happens a lot in Generation 1. So this is a very difficult to rank generation, I think. But then again, it's the only generation I've ever ranked. So what do I even know? I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, guys, this video is stretched on long enough. I'm going to call it now. You have a nice day, and I wish you the best of luck in your endeavors in life. Goodbye.